Being recorded.
Give
her a name. Jane. All right, I'd like to call our meeting to order. Roll call. All members of council are present this evening. We did not have a closed meeting this evening. And got a little bit of echo here. Maybe on the volume we should. All right, we'll get about a 30-second moment of silence and collect our thoughts, and certainly then we'll rise for the national anthem.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From
We'll begin this evening's proceedings with land acknowledgement, and we acknowledge that we are in the land surrounded by water, originally inhabited by Indigenous peoples who have traveled this area since time immemorial. This territory is within the lands honored by the Wampum treaties and agreements between the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, Lenni Lenape, allied nations to peacefully share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Specifically, we would like to acknowledge the presence of the Three Fires Confederacy, the Ojibwe, Ottawa, Potawatomi, and Huron-Wendat peoples. We're dedicated to honoring Indigenous history, culture, while remaining committed to moving forward respectfully with all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. To the members, any disclosure of pecuniary interest as presented to you this evening. Hearing none, we'll have that reflected in our minutes. We have the minutes, and actually I'll be looking at the old members because obviously October 11th, September 13th, November 14th, those meetings, obviously for the new members, we're not in attendance, so on the minutes. So if I could have our returning members move those minutes. Deputy Mayor Bichetti, supported by Councillor Houston. On those minutes, any errors or omissions? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Special council meeting, November the 15th, 2022 inaugural meeting. I'm looking for a motion on those minutes. Councillor Higginson? Councillor Dorner? On those minutes, any errors or omissions? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. No supplementary. Supplementary, move Councillor Houston and Councillor Tonio. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Thank you. And then we'll move on to delegations, and I'll call upon our Director of Planning, Mr. Hillman, to introduce a delegation that will be presenting this evening. Looks like the three wise men.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening to council. Quick introductions. So as returning councillors and new ones may know that we had quite a interesting year in our building services division due to a number of staffing issues. And through that process, we were able to contract out services when we were without a chief building official, which is, you know, probably about as close to a crisis that I've been into. In planning doesn't usually have those. And certainly for us, it was. So Dan Lenardi, furthest on my left, is a retired official, has experience as a chief building official. And during his time helping us, we were able to bring on Peter Vallari, and he comes to us with a considerable experience as well. And we reflected on some of the operational situations that we were facing and we had faced for a number of years. And we took advantage of their expertise, their fresh eyes, and asked that they perform a operational review. So this evening, you'll see on the agenda a report from myself and from senior administration regarding that operational review with some recommendations. In the meantime, the intent was for them to provide a summary of what they've observed. And there was assistance provided across our senior management team and the organization with respect to growth we're anticipating and so on. But this is their presentation and what they see as required to ensure that we're able to provide a very legislatively appropriate but good customer service. So with that, I will turn over the chair and I'll just go back to my desk for the moment.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hillman.
Thank you, Brian. Good evening, your worship, members of council. Like Brian said, my name is Dan Lenardi. I co-authored this report along with Peter Vallari. Both Peter and I bring with us 40 years of combined experience as building officials. And part of that experience includes 18 years as chief building officials and department managers. Excuse me. This report that we have before you tonight was done with constant communication with the Director of Development Services and also brought in people and culture as well. Next slide. Oh, back up the slide, please. Here we go. So this review was done in anticipation of our regional growth that we see coming. We're forecasting a strong housing market and continued commercial and industrial growth. We need to ensure the ability for the town to deliver our legislated obligation and focus on strong customer service. Next slide, please. Like Brian mentioned, building services is in a bit of a transition out of a crisis mode. The storm cloud. Lots happened in a short period of time. Building services was unable to meet our legislated obligations during those times. Immediate steps were taken. We brought in some temporary help, being a temporary part-time acting chief building official and 2 temporary part-time building inspectors. That helped stabilize the operation and bring us closer to delivering our legislated services. Next slide, please. During that time, we've also completed the recruitment for our chief building official, Peter, and our building inspector. Recruitment for building officials is very difficult. So building officials require very specific qualifications, and to get those qualifications, they're required to pass very complex building code exams. Now we have our staff, we're beginning the training of our staff, which can take up to 2 years for a fully trained building official. Next slide, please. Now our industry challenges, the province is forecasting 1.5 million new homes in the next 10 years. And we have a shortage of qualified building officials in our region. So this shortage is recognized in our region and poses a real threat to the development industry. We are under immense pressure to deliver our legislated services within our legislated timeframes. We must be prepared to meet what's coming in our future. So the Ontario Building Code Act sort of establishes a service model. It also establishes a method of collecting the required fees to ensure that you can provide that service. Basically, charge what it's needed to charge, but you must deliver the minimum legislative services. Next slide, please. Now, our obligation, some may know, council is responsible for the enforcement of the Ontario Building Code Act, which is a provincial legislation. It requires the municipality to perform very specific functions within specific timeframes, as I mentioned. And council shall appoint a chief building official and the required inspectors necessary to execute the Ontario Building Code Act and enforce the act. It's a legislative function, and every developer, contractor, they rely on those roles being met so that they can continue with their development. Next slide, please. In addition to our legislative requirement, we have our customer service, which is very important. So we consider building officials as the technical experts in the construction industry. We provide education, proper communication. It also fulfills council's strategic priority to steward the town's continuous improvement approach. Transparent communication is essential. So we must develop our staff with a clear focus on professionalism and improving our customer experience. So we need to deliver our service in a timely manner to meet the needs of the construction industry. Next slide, please. So building services, there's really three little areas here. Our core services, which I mentioned earlier, which is our legislative requirements. They include issuing permits, collecting fees, performing the required inspections, ensuring compliance with the Ontario Building Code. That's what we're required to do under law. In addition, we provide community services. They're not legislated, but they're important to the community. And they normally fall within the scope of the building department because most building services are equipped to issue permits and provide inspections. Those non-legislative services are things like swimming pool permits, fence permits, sign permits, grading of property permits, things that are, again, are important to the community, but not legislated. And then the last one is support services. We're relied on regularly from other agencies or other departments to provide some expertise with land maintenance, property standards, our 3 zoning bylaws, liquor license renewal applications, patio expansions, things of that nature. Next slide. So our capacity right now consists of 3 people. So the building department is a chief building official, 1 building inspector, and 1 building clerk. We're currently using some supplementary assistance with the additional temporary staff that we brought in. That's helped us to meet our legislative obligations. Next slide. So regional growth. All indications suggest a period of exceptional and sustained growth. To date, growth predictions forecast over 37,000 housing units across the county in the next 30 years. We can expect an average of 1,240 units countywide compared to the annual average of 700 units that we had over the past 20 years. At the same time, our employment growth across the commercial and industrial sector is projected to increase in the county from approximately 72,000 jobs in 2021 to 117,000 jobs in 2051, an increase of over 45,000 jobs over 30 years. Next slide, please. Oh, you got it. So what does that mean for the town? So regional growth will undoubtedly bring development to the town of Tecumseh. Construction of 35,000 housing units over the next 20 years and creating an average of 175 housing units per year. So over the past 10 years, the town's averaged 91 housing units per year, and now we're expecting an average of 175 housing units per year. We also expect stronger spikes in those numbers in the next 2 years. We anticipate 380 housing units next year and 340 housing units in 2024. Very, very strong growth. In May, I understand council approved strategic capital works projects that will support development over the next 20 years. So these projects will support approximately 4,000 housing units, 482,000 square feet of commercial, and 3.6 million square feet of industrial growth. We expect very high demand will be made on the town, in particular, the development and permit process. So this service strain will undoubtedly create a pinch point for our development community. Next slide. So this is just a simple slide that shows that on average, over the past 10 years, building services process an average of 442 permits per year. Next slide. So our average of 442 permits per year will increase to 840 permits per year over the next 10 years. This demand will essentially double the annual permits we issue. We will experience considerable strain to meet our legislative responsibilities. So building services in its current form is ill-equipped to support this increase in robust development. So our current staff complement cannot review the applications, issue permits, and perform the inspections that are required within the legislated time period that's required by the Ontario Building Code. We have a straight capacity issue. And it's also hard to attract and retain technical staff in this current environment. Again, they're very building officials, the qualified building officials are few and far between. There's a severe shortage. Our operation and technology is also in need of modernization to meet our customer expectation to streamline our processes. We need to embrace modern technology. Next slide. So basically, all the preceding information, our legislative requirements, our commitment to our customer service, our established services, our operational capacity, the forecasted growth, and our service delivery all point directly to the need for more staff. At this point, I'll turn it over to Peter Valoric, who will take the presentation over from here.
Thank you, Dan. Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. We have determined that 2 additional technical staff are required to meet our legislated duties and provide exceptional customer service. The staff being added to our complement are proposed as a Deputy Chief Building Official and 1 Senior Building Inspector. Challenges with recruitment, as Dan had alluded to, has been quite severe across the province. In order to perform certain functions and review certain types of structures, building officials require specific ministry qualifications. Next slide, please. We need to modernize our digital transformation. Many municipalities have overhauled their records management and retention systems to a fully paperless environment that integrates with all projects, stakeholders, architects, contractors, owners, and building officials. Building services needs to transition from a paper-based cumbersome records management system to a modern digital system. Recently, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario worked with key partners in the building and municipal sector to select a digital solution to manage building permits and more efficiently and effectively manner. Cloud Permit was the selected platform. Building Services has also selected Cloud Permit as the optimal platform for our operation. It could be expanded to the remainder of the development services team and has potential regional benefits. Next slide, please. Once Cloud Permit is implemented, the development community will see an immediate impact and benefit. Cloud Permit is development focused. It helps with the ease of tracking projects through the design and approval process. It's a web-based system and it can be accessed from anywhere where Wi-Fi is available, which is very important during these periods of COVID. Real-time inspection results and construction status updates to the builder and development community is optimum with this system. Next slide, please. Next, there's a fee review graph on the screen. Building services must provide the legislated function established in the Act and the Building Code, while collecting sufficient fees to be self-funded with no impact to the tax base. The graph shows that we are at the lower end of our fees within our region. Next slide, please. Our average annual total permit fee revenue has been approximately $585,000 over the last 5 years. There's a typo in that, just to clarify. It says 10 on the screen. It's actually 5. The projected it's projected to generate a total permit fee revenue of $840,000 in 2023 and $991,000 in 2024. Projections have been reduced by 30% to prevent the overestimation of growth. Next slide, please. By bringing our fees in line with the region, we can expect a conservative annual increase of approximately 93,000 for both 2023 and 2024. The development committee has been very clear in communicating its primary need for timely service and is willing to pay the associated permit fees required to ensure the service. Delays to construction schedules are far greater concern to them than permit fees. Next slide, please. Now we move into our recommendations. First recommendation is for staffing. We need to increase our staff complement to enable us to meet current and future demands made on the Building Services Division. This increase of staff will consist of the addition of 1 deputy chief building official and 1 senior inspector. Next slide, please. The next recommendation is for technology. We need to implement an electronic permitting and inspection system to better serve our citizens and development community. Cloud Permit has been selected due to a variety of factors, including its customization, fluid integration, its AMO affiliation, and it is becoming a standard tool in our industry, both regionally and provincially. Next slide, please. The last recommendation is for a fee adjustment. We need to increase fees to better align with our neighboring municipalities while remaining competitive. The square foot cost of development will be increased to $1.20 for residential, institutional, and commercial, and $1 for industrial. This will allow the ability to address growth in our community in a responsible manner while remaining self-funded and completely independent of the tax base. This is a summary of our operational review, and Dan and myself are available for any questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. I think one of the items that I didn't see, and I know my last involvement with AMO, I mean, I'm very aware of the cloud permit in that regard. But what the turnaround that the government is asking is 10 days, you know, for somebody to come in with their plans, and you need to have an answer to them back in 10 days. So if we're going to be putting out 175 units, you know, when you do the math and you know, with 1 person and then you got to build in holidays, and I can see the difficulty that that will bring. Today, you know, for the benefit of members of council and that, I had the opportunity to meet with my colleagues, mayors across the county and the city. Peter, you were there as well, and our CAO. And he was pretty adamant in terms of with the building association and the demand that the province is putting on all of us in the community, where we need to build, you know, 30-some thousand homes in a very short period of time. And when you look at the numbers that are given, and if we do the math properly in that, you know, in the area as a total is about 1,600, I think the record number in terms of housing starts in the region. We got to bump that up to 3,000 if we're ever going to meet the requirements from the province and so forth. So I think it's you know, we've been very fortunate to both of you that came in at a really tough time for us in filling that gap. But I think it's you know, it's highly time now that we look at making sure that we beef up that department, because we can see that we need to be ahead of the demand, ahead of the curve, and not try to be you know, reactive to certainly for the demands and so forth. So I think it's very important for us to be ready, and we know what's coming down the pipe, and it's exciting for the community. But in the same token, when the province is expecting us to really so-called reduce the red tape, I think they need to do a lot more at that end. But to be responsive within 10 days, I think that is, you know, going to be difficult. And we all know, and I know talking with my colleagues, you know, from the other communities have said it themselves, they don't have the staff to be able to handle that. So the sooner we get out of the gate and bring these individuals in, Hopefully not robbing Peter to pay Paul, so to speak. Sorry, Peter. But I think it's gonna be important for us to be at the forefront on that. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Dan and Peter, for the presentation. My question is in regards to recruitment. As you know, there's different level qualifications, as you alluded into your report, complex buildings, high rise. And if you don't have those qualifications, you can't do those inspections. And so we have to, contract out or whatnot. So is the plan to recruit, like, are we able to find people that are fully qualified in all those areas? Because that's the challenge. And if not, I think, we need to see what we have presently. Like, for example, you guys have your, you can do plumbing, you can do high rise, you can do fire. What is the lack? And we have to make sure that whoever we bring in, we'd be able to fill all those areas, right? Because it'd be difficult to find that one person that has everything right now that we need. So my question is, in terms of recruitment, how would that plan out?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through you, Mayor, to Deputy. The report evolves around a very strategic plan and going out for a deputy chief and a senior building official to help us get through those tougher periods with the more qualified people. So that is our hope, by having the elevated positions, that we would be able to attract the better candidates out there.
And if I could add to that a little bit through you, your worship, there's also regionally, we've been working with our neighboring municipalities and chief building officials. We're all in the same boat, essentially, as we know. And there's some in-house training that's been provided pre-COVID. It was, maybe 2 or 3 training courses per year. We were looking to sort of elevate the qualifications of our regional building officials. And we just recently had another building, the first one since the pandemic, and we are looking to bring those training models and those in-house training courses to our region again. That'll certainly help getting people's qualification where they need to be to kind of catch the wave of development at the right time.
And I'm assuming this is going to be external, right? Like, you'd advertise even the GTA, because there could be building officials down there that may want to relocate in southwestern Ontario with all the good things that are happening down this region with the weather, in terms of cost of, property wise, they may want to relocate. So I hope, we would get a good turnout in terms of people applying.
Yes, through you, your worship. Normally, I'm not sure how the recruitment works here, but normally they would, advertise for chief building official or for a building official with the Ontario Building Officials Association, and there's a portal there for people who are looking for employment to see who's hiring a building official.
Go ahead, Councilor Houston.
Thank you, your worship. Thank you for the presentation. A question that has come to mind, and I'm wondering, with the projections that we have over the next couple of years, and just the workload that would follow along with it, is it a kind of a linear, correlation between value in housing and the value of those developments like we have on Tecumseh Road in comparison to the workload, or if there's commercial, or if we have industrial, is the work required on our end much more complex and much more lengthy for industrial and commercial versus residential? And if we were to have more industrial, or a couple industrial developments, would that really slow things down in comparison to like 175 housing developments that we're projecting?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Houston, just to give it some perspective, the residential housing proposed influx that we're hoping to see in the municipality, every residential home is on average 12 to 13 inspections. That's if everything goes well and we don't go back and re-inspect. So you multiply that 175 times, it gets pretty extensive on the need for the bodies to cover those inspections. On top of that, the industrials are reviews and inspections are are much more complex in nature, required more time on the site than you would on a residential. So the increase, and I believe after a meeting with Brian Hillman, the mix is very well that's in the chute right now. A great blend of industrial, commercial, and residential. And certainly the intensity of the residential being high rises or apartment buildings will require quite a bit from our staff.
Just further to that, through your worship, I guess the simplest way to look at it would be the length of time for that construction project. We would be involved with our staff for the duration of that. So it could be a commercial or an industrial project, but if it's a simple project that'll be built in a short period of time, then our involvement would be less. There's some homes you can't look at a house as a house sort of comparison. Some of the homes we've seen are quite sizable and require a lot of time to review and to inspect. So it's almost proportional to the length of time the project will take. It will be the demands on our staff.
Okay.
Just one way of looking at it.
Yep. And supplementary, I know that there is a report. So I don't know if it's timely. I do have a question regarding the report. So I don't know if it's timely to ask that question now or. Okay. Yep. So.
Before the question report, the question.
Yep.
Review. Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor, to you both. Thank you for the review, by the way. It's in reference to the square footage cost for permits. Why is industrial not just at the 120 per square foot, like residential, institutional, and commercial?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So when we looked at the increases, two factors were looked at. One was we've had a bylaw which justified those rates in about 2018. And it has a provision, if so desired, for a cost of living index that would be applied to it. Even though the town has had some fairly good development, it was decided that for competitive reasons that we would not increase that charge for that period of time. So what we did was we looked at two factors. One was the indexing that would have happened would have resulted in the numbers that you're actually seeing. They're within a couple pennies of each other. And we looked at that against, that there's the reality test of we are in a competitive market to an extent. So we're in a housing market that is our region of Windsor, Essex. And we wanted to be within a reasonable line on our rates. So when you see the $1.20 versus the dollar, that starts from a justification that was provided 5 years ago that the cost to provide an inspection, plans review, et cetera, for industrial was slightly lower. And it was rationalized at 85 cents a square foot. So when we apply the index, it came out to $1 and the others were at $1.20. So that's just maintaining the rationale that was provided. And fortunately, it keeps us within a very good standing in relationship to our neighbors.
Through you, just regarding the report, there was mention in the financial section of the report that one of the recommendations is to create a dedicated stabilization reserve fund as a tool to self-fund the building services. So just a question that would actually be funded from the rate increases that we're seeing here today.
Through your worship, that's correct. Everything that, including the stabilization reserve fund, will simply be through permit fee, capturing permit fees.
Okay, thank you. Actually, I am happy to move the report if appropriate at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very briefly, actually, I just wanted to thank Dan and Peter first for the time they took to offer this report to us. We are very appreciative And I can't reiterate enough that the circumstances we faced were dire. And we've managed to really turn things around. And in fact, one of the testaments, I think, is there was a period where I was receiving, and I think a number of you were receiving calls that were reflecting a situation that was not good from a service delivery perspective. That hasn't happened. If anything, I've received very positive responses. So we're very proud of our team in the building services area. And it's through Dan and Peter's leadership that I'm quite happy that we're able to present this report. I think it's very visionary, and it's a plan that gives us some very a high degree of confidence to move forward and be one of the leaders in the region. So with that, I just wanted to reiterate the recommendation is that this report and attached to it is the operational review be received. And we're asking that council approve it in principle. And further that the approval and implementation of this operational review be referred to the 2023 budget deliberations. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Right, thank you, Mr. Hillman, and certainly the report, the review is pretty timely with what's transpiring, and in particular what we experienced in our meeting this afternoon. I think it's quite timely. If there's no further questions or certain comments at this stage, I'll go back to Councillor Houston. You're prepared to move the report. Thank you. And do I have support? Councillor Higginson. On the motion, all in favor? Opposed, if any, and that's carried unanimous. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Okay. All right, members of council, you have communications for information. You have 3 items here. Could we have a motion to receive said communications? Councillor Jobin, Councillor Tonio. On the motion, all in favor of receipt? Carried. On the communications, is there any communications you'd like to speak of or speak to? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
I just lost my agenda page there. I believe it's item 2.
Yeah, that's
Or sorry. 1, 2. Not for information. Sorry. Are we on information now?
Yes.
Yeah.
we're on communications.
Yeah. No, the one I had was for action. So that's
Okay, I would like to support the town of Perry that's supporting Brighton, and it's the Healthcare Connect system for members of the Canadian Armed Forces. As we all know, members that serve in the forces, they have health care up until the day they're discharged, and then they lose their health care privileges, and in particular for those who are discharged for health care reasons. I think what Brighton is recommending, I think we should as well, that the provincial government under the Ministry of Health should look at extending health care to our members, in particular those who've served our country. I don't think they need to be abandoned at the time that they're discharged. I believe that government has a responsibility to serve our forces, whether they're active, which they are, but when they're retired, we should be recommending to the government. So I would entertain a motion from council to support the municipality of Perry, who is supporting the municipality of Brighton. Councillor Jobin, move. Support. Councillor, I gotta get used to the names now, Thorner. And on the motion, any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Thank you. And then we'll move down. Sorry. Go ahead. Deputy
thank you,
Mayor.
Mayor. Now I found it under communication for information, item number 2. The Essex Region Conservation Authority regarding Bill 23.
Yes.
I know it's here to be received, but just a couple comments, and then obviously there's still work to be done in that. But I know we talked about it at IRCA. There is a letter that is being sent. But 2 things: growth should pay for growth, and we just had a report tonight in terms of the requirements that are needed. So that to me is one area that we need to be a focus. That developers not being assessed applicable development charges or parkland fees forces the shortfall on who? The general taxpayer. So that's the one that sticks out. And then the second one is the amendment to the Conservation Authority Act. You know, that to me is concerning as it signals a move away from environmental protection at a time when climate change impacts are being felt more at the local level. So I know Urca submitted a letter, our chair, Councillor Jobin, who's there, penned a nice letter that's been sent out. I know it was due November 24th, so the timelines are very strict and term over. But there's opportunities because different acts, different legislations fall, I believe, some in December, some in the 9th. So this working group, I think they just need to know these are our concerns. And I know AMO has a few concerns as well. Hopefully the government hears that and then whatever we can do on our end at a local level is important that they hear us, because a lot of municipal councils are being inaugurated this week. It's so easy just to kind of miss these deadlines. So thank you.
Would you like to add something? Councillor Jobin?
Certainly, thank you. And through you, just to convey that the entire board unanimously supported this document and the communication. So it's for us to receive and understand. But if it's the wish of this council to develop our own letter for requests of concerns or our planning department, that's something that we have as a council have to determine. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Madam CEO.
Thank you. Through the mayor to council. So as you recall in the agenda package tonight, there is a report on Bill 23. And the intent of that report, which Mr. Hillman will present shortly, is to provide that to the government through the EBR posting in time for November the 24th. It also outlined concerns that we have with the changing role of the conservation authorities. So I believe that probably the county's letter is going into the EBR and with council's favorable consideration of the report this evening, ours will as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to bring it up because I know a couple of meetings ago, I think when the government was introducing Bill 23, I had, I guess, the question to administration: what impact is going to have on our municipality? And at that particular time, and there's no doubt there is an impact. And the other thing too, I think in the report, every municipality in the county, including the city of Windsor, declared a climate emergency. And here we are, building towards, dealing with the climate change issues, and the Conservation Authority plays a huge role in that, and with us as well. So I think I get the point in terms of the housing issue. I really think, there's no doubt there is a housing crisis. The whole issue of, immigration, 400,000 to 500,000 new immigrants coming into the country every year. We got to house them somewhere, and they're not all going to be in Toronto and Vancouver or Montreal. They're going to be, spread out certainly throughout the country and so forth. To your point there, Mayor, we've always said it here: growth needs to pay for growth. Everybody that owns a home have paid for their services. They don't need to pay additional services. So we've got to find hopefully some common ground. So I guess we can debate a little more under the report that's been penned by our planner on that. But no doubt we can certainly entertain a motion, to support the Conservation Authority's letter. Moved by Councillor Jobin, supported by Councillor Higginson, that we support the item 3 of the Essex Region Conservation Authority letter dated November 17th. On the motion, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Okay, move on to item L, members of council. We've got 2 items, communication action. First is the Federation of Canadian Municipalities dated November 11, 2022. The Sustainable Communities Conference. Is it being held? I think this is right about now, isn't it?
2023, this is for the authorization of members to attend the 2023.
Okay. All right. Move.
Item 1 and 2.
1 and 2, okay, and the other one is the Congress of New Urbanism to attend. On the motion, moved by Deputy Mayor Buchetti, supported by Councillor Tonio. On the motion, any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Move on to committee minutes. We have the minutes of the Police Services Board dated October 17th, and the recommendation is that they be accepted. Moved by Councillor Houston, supported by Councillor Jobin. Any questions or comments on the minutes? All in favor? Opposed, carried. Town of Tecumseh Business Improvement Area minutes of October 19th. We have a recommendation that they be accepted. Councillor Houston, and do I have support? Got to be Councillor Tonio. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. I'm not avoiding our two new councillors, just that you were not there. Okay, reports. Community and Recreation Services, call upon Mr. Anthony to give us the 2022-15 recreation programs, special events for 2023.
Thank you, Mayor McNamara, members of council. This report details the programs and events that the Community and Recreation Services plans to offer to the community in 2023. These plans include enhancements to some of the programs: Canada Day, Tecumseh Twilight, the end of summer celebration, and Christmas in Tecumseh, which are all events that the town staff oversee. The expenditures associated with enhanced and new programs and events will be presented as part of the operational budget presented during the 2023 budget deliberation process. I'd also like to acknowledge in attendance this evening remotely, I have Brett Palmer and Katie Pavlovsky, who will be here and ask me if any questions. They are on Zoom, so they are here and available. They did author a large part of the report, so I certainly want to acknowledge them. And Christina, I'll just go through my comments, and if you can follow on my screens, please. So the following is the 2023 list of large and medium-sized programs and events that are planned for the community. These programs and events are categorized by those that have traditionally been offered to the community and those that are new within the past year or two and are planned or commencement in 2023. We'll start off with the Tecumseh Corn Fest, which began in 1975 when the local Kinsman Club, with the help of Green Giant, started. Over the years, this event has grown, and it has also been managed by a number of different ways. We've had community-based, we've had a community council-based, and we've had the CRS department ran it the last couple of years. The festival has evolved over that time as well, ranging between three-day and 4-day events, depending on what was going to be offered those years. Attendance was somewhere between 10 and 15,000. That is unless we had some name brand over the past. There were some large entertainment that was brought in, and certainly the crowds were a lot larger for those events. The growth and scope of the duration of the Corn Festival has surpassed town staff's capability to host it, and the other event and program offerings that you'll see tonight and are described in this report. Currently, administration is in discussion with the Optimist Club of St. Clair Beach to reinvent the Corn Festival. Under the assumed leadership of the Optimist Club, a reimagined festival is being considered, with plans to reintroduce it in the next year or two. Accordingly, a 2023 Corn Festival managed and hosted by the CRS department is not planned. The partnership with the Optimist Club goes back to a number of years ago. Council, and remember the sitting council members that we went through a number of processes to try to turn this event over to the community, and unfortunately it was unsuccessful. We continued on with the last 3 years of the pandemic with it not being offered. You'll see the enhancement of the other programs that staff have been able to spend their time on, develop, and certainly deliver a great program to our community. I will not go through all of them. I will highlight some of the key ones that are there so that council is aware and what we're planning. So weekend public skating obviously is coming back. It just started back now. And we're continue to reintroduce that back into the community. The Christmas in Tecumseh Santa Claus Parade and Breakfast with the Clauses. I think council can all realize they were just in attendance this past Friday night. And I think the community enjoyed the event. It brought back the community to come out in droves to our festival. And I think it was well planned and organized, and we certainly welcome the community coming back out. The other events that have highlighted in here are also events that we've ran in the past, and we are looking to enhance some of them. Earth Day, for example, we've expanded on it over the last number of years. It's become quite a popular event for the community. It's a short 2 to 3 hour event, but usually held in Lakewood Park, and we'll continue to look at planting trees and help with the growth of our tree canopy in the community. The outdoor movie nights, we do try to move those around. Again, the last couple of years, we couldn't operate them with COVID-19, but we try to make sure that all of the wards are represented. Canada Day is once again an event that we've been able to expand on over the last number of years. And this year, again, there was some great attendance. The weather was perfect. And I think the Lakewood Park is a great host for that facility. Some recently established events that we've added to our programming. The National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. We've really taken strides to ensure that that day becomes popular, and that we ensure that we follow the rest of the country in acknowledging. June is Recreation and Parks Month. We've again been able to enhance on that event. Normally we just put out a calendar with the events, but we've been able to take some time and introduce some programming. The Tecumseh Pickleball Tournament. This year was a partnership, but we saw the growth of that sport. We see what's going on all around us. They had a tremendous tournament, and they're up and looking to run that again next year and hopefully expand on what they provided this year. It was a quick turnaround from the time we opened the facility to the time the tournament came, but was well attended. We also have National Indigenous Peoples Day, which again, we've tried to enhance and make sure that we make that very much known in our community, that we are very supportive of the Indigenous community. Tecumseh Twilight was introduced in 2022. This festival was food trucks, exotic cars, live music, face painting, and movie under the stars at McCullough Park. Very popular event, one-day event. We counted over 2,000 people in attendance, and we're hoping that becomes a marquee event in the community. One other thing that I neglected to introduce at the beginning of this, a lot of these events we try to share and make sure that all 5 of our wards have a host or have some events in them so that all of our residents are able to partake, not only in just the larger ones that they come to certain centers, but also in their own areas. Halloween Trunk or Treat was introduced this year by our Optimist Club, again, after COVID-19 was able to, so that was a partnership event. Christmas in July, we started a few years ago during COVID, and once again, it's become popular in the summertime, and the community has really enjoyed it. Fall and winter recreation programs. These are programs that we're going to start to offer at the arena through the fall and winter months. This is an enhancement to our program services. We didn't do it in the past. What we're doing is using some of the public skating supervisors as well to host some of these programs, reintroducing things like babysitting, first aid, offering to the community. This is a slow start to build up so that when we do have a facility to host these, that we certainly will be able to continue and expand on those programs. March break camps. Once again, we haven't been able to offer these in the past because our student population or our student employees were not employed at that time of the year. We have these program enhancement and public skating staff that we are able to offer this camp on a limited number. It'll be first come, first served, but again, hopefully we can rebuild on that. An exciting one that happened this year during the 100th anniversary was a firefighter combat challenge. I know it has been run in the past, but it was really a popular event. Our staff are working with with Chief Bondi and his staff to maybe make this an annual event, co-partner with the fire department. And certainly, I think, again, it's something that was very popular and something that we can continue to build on. That basically is the list. There is some financial implications to this, which again will be proposed during the budget. As well with this, the staff have really worked hard to keep these increases to a minimum. And with that, they're looking for some additional sponsorships that they've been out to get as well to make these events and programs very successful and continue to make Tecumseh the place that you want to live, work, and play. With that, I'm open to any questions, and then I can following the questions, I can read out the recommendation.
All right, thank you very much. Questions? Councillor Jobin and Councillor Houston and Deputy Mayor Keddy. Councillor Tonio.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Anthony. Thank you for the report. I do have just a couple of comments. The Corn Festival reinventing or rebranding is fantastic, as we hear all the time or see on the Tecumseh watch groups. They miss it, they want it back. But again, you know, what people have to understand is that volunteers are hard to come by. And that was part of one of the problems with having it being operational and the liability things associated to the event. In speaking with the Optimist Club, I would like to see that they have an appetite to have council a little bit inclusive, even in just a couple of meetings, just to convey some of the past practices or experiences that council has had when the Corn Fest was in operation. Is that something that they're open to have some communication or have someone sit as a liaison, or is it just going to be specifically them?
If I may, through the mayor to Councillor Jobin, the event itself is going to be rebranded, so it will have some facets of the Corn Fest, but there'll also be some new that are introduced. The Optimist Club certainly is open to discussions, but it will be their club taking on the actual event. It may have a new look to it. It may be reintroduced over a couple-year period of time, because as council is aware, these things take quite a while to plan. So they just don't happen overnight. So they may not be able to, their envisioned rebranding of this event may not be able to take full course this year. It may be introduced a portion of it and then a portion afterwards. But it will be a family event that will continue to offer the residents a festival within the community.
Okay, thank you. And supplementary, if I may. Just in reference to having the event in Ward 5, that would be fantastic. The Combat Challenge, like you stated, it does have a great turnout. And I would say any of the other events that have been popping up throughout that I experienced just after COVID were actually well attended and well organized. So I do appreciate the efforts of the entire team. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Houston.
Thank you, and through you to Mr. Anthony. Thank you again for your continued leadership, and you know, it really shows in this report. I enjoyed reading this because you know, I find myself going agenda to agenda, and sometimes you forget about everything that we have going on as a municipality. So to read and put it all down on paper and flip through all of the events, it was refreshing. And again, exciting to see everything that we're planning on doing, you know, for the next year. And, you know, we should be really proud of this. And I think the community is proud of it as well, because there's something going on all the time. And it's great. So I just want to pass my appreciation along. Great report. And, you know, I wish, you know, I want to thank everyone in the department for their help to put this on, because it does take a lot of work. And we do see our team members who are out, you know, at night, on weekends, you know, with our residents. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone. And, you know, I think with everything that we have going on, it's going to be a great 2023 for, you know, Parks and Rec and everybody. So thank you.
I thank you, Councillor Houston. And certainly, yes, we have a great team, and they very much have pride in what they do and what they provide for the community. So I thank you, and I will pass that on to the staff.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Paul. Just before Councillor Jobin's comment about liaison, I believe as a club, they welcome new members. I'm a member, volunteer member. I know Councillor Dorner's a member. Councillor Tonio as well. He helps out volunteers. So those meetings are public. Just feel free if they have that discussion. Just so know it's a welcome, open club there. So in looking at the report, Mr. Anthony, I know one number that stuck out was the budget, going to budget 240,000. And if I recall, I know Mayor McNamara, myself, and even Councillor Houston and Jobin here were during the Corn Fest, one of our major events. That was the budget for the Corn Fest alone. It was over 200,000, if I recall correctly. So what we're doing now, what I see in this report is we've got all these other events, all these other festivals spread throughout that we're offering, and we're saying to the service club, the Optimist, can you take over this major event? I'd like to see that major event. Yeah, I'd like to see that major event continue because it's a known event in Ontario, top 100 FEO, Festival Events Ontario Festival. Everyone knows the Tecumseh Corn Fest. So now, if it needs to rebrand or whatnot, those are discussions with the Optimist. I'm sure they're going to put their, thinking caps on. But my question to you, and I did see it in one of the reports with the fireworks helping out with policing cost. Is there any transition that the town is able, because we don't want to be seen as we're just dropping this event and here, service club, you take over. There's got to be some kind of, that 1 or 2 year of just helping out, get their feet going, because I could see the service club taking it over and rebranding it and having this major event, whatever it is. But have you had any discussions at all, in terms of, their interest in what commitments that as a town that we can offer them to encourage them to continue this event?
Certainly, and to the deputy mayor through the mayor's chair, just a couple things. First, I'll go back to the budget. So the revenues and expenses are similar to what the Corn Fest budget was. The bottom line was probably 60 to 80,000 it offered, and that's exactly we're similar in that area with all of the programs we're providing. So I just didn't want to make some confusion or any confusion that it was $250,000 cost. It was the revenues and expenses, which was a bottom line. Secondary to that, to answer your questions, yes, we've had numerous discussions with the Optimist Club to date. They were the ones that did approach us about wanting to take this on, and again, rebranding it to have it look as a festival to the community. They certainly, we've talked to them about the CERT program, and we're not walking away from them. We'll meet consistently. We meet on a number of things with the Taste of Tecumseh, the fireworks. We're very much involved with the Optimist Club. They're a great community organization, like any other club in the community. We work with them, and we will continue to help them, in any way we can. But they are understanding, and they are looking to take it on as their event. And if they need us, we'll be there to help.
Very good. Thank you.
I just want to supplement Paul's answer through the mayor to you, deputy. One of the reasons, and thank you for the kind comments about the report, but one of the reasons that we brought the report is, as you know, and certainly for the benefit of the new council members, it's council that determines what services are offered and the level of service. So this report outlines some new events coming in for 2023 and a change in the Corn Festival event. So that's really the fundamental reason that this report has been compiled, is to ensure that council understands what they're looking at when they see the 2023 budget proposed. So to add on to Mr. Anthony's response, that certainly the Optimists are a willing partner. They're a great and fabulous community partner. So we'll work with them on an in-kind basis through our staff support to help do that knowledge transfer. However, if there was going to be any substantive investment in any future rebranded festival that they put on, you will see us back here in this chamber speaking to you about it. Because if it's a substantive allocation of staff time or dollars from the town, that is the purview of this table, and we will come back to you with that.
And that's good to know, and that's important for the Optimist to know. I think, in terms of guidance, intel, paperwork, logistics, things that might not be financial, is maybe something that the Parks Department or Paul's department there that have done it in the past. that would be able to share that. I think that would help get things going. And again, it's a huge festival. This is, in the report, it talks about, staff in it. It's really grown to a point where it requires a lot of work if that you want to replicate that. So the rebranding part, I think, is going to start off small. I don't think they're going to be able to, we don't want to kid ourselves and think there's going to be a corn fest next year and the service club is going to do it. It's going to be very similar to what it was pre-COVID. I think that's important to note.
Yeah, and I think over the years too, there's been, there was a huge shift in responsibility that was put onto the municipal staff. And if we go back in years gone by, it used to be the Kingsman Corn Festival. Then it became the Pillsbury Green Giant Corn Fest. And it went on. Then we had a lot of volunteers early on. We had the Knights of Columbus. We had the Optimist Club that been involved in many years, and a whole host of group. 400 to 500 volunteers was nothing, that to get them there. What had happened as well is that as there's a whole generation of people that was their Corn Fest, the reunions with St. Anne's and Bell River High and so forth. That generation now are marched on, and it's a whole new issue. And I think we were trying to hang on to something, and I do believe other communities, what they're doing as well is that they're having more of the service clubs. I think the Optimist Club have been tremendous partners, for the town, not only for Corn Fest, but a lot of other events that they put on in the community and so forth. This is a great opportunity to expand that to other chapters of the Optimist Club in Windsor and other areas to partake and to talk about rebranding and rebuilding it. I think there's a great opportunity for them there. And to your point, Madam CAO, the transfer of the knowledge piece, I think is important. A lot of the real volunteers that back in the day, they were responsible for certain sections of it. They're gone. And it's been mentioned earlier, volunteers, it's tough to get them for one day. Now you're asking somebody to commit for 4 days at the festival and then a whole year in prep, because to prepare the festival, those have been around, it doesn't happen overnight. And in the budget, I remember at the time we were very fortunate. We had the provincial treasurer that was our member of parliament here, and we used to get anywhere from $75,000 to $100,000 grant every year. So those days are pretty tough, and so forth. So I think there's a tremendous opportunity, for certainly the Optimist Club and others. And I think there's still a commitment from, they're not known as Bonduelle anymore. North Terra is the new owners. And the good news is North Terra is 70% owned by Canadian, Quebec Corps, and one of the biggest, I don't know if it's Desjardins or one of the big credit unions of Quebec that now own them. And so they're Canadian owned, and they're still committed in providing, corn and so forth. So that's good news, because without corn, you haven't got a corn fest and so forth. So I think there's the report, I think, identifies, and I know there are some folks going to be disappointed, but at least it's not, there's the transition, and maybe there'll be a mini opportunity, and certainly in August, and then they can build from that, get the confidence and so forth, and then the full transfer in 2024. I think that's certainly a possibility. The other thing I think I want to mention as well, the just recently our Christmas in Tecumseh was incredible. It was so wonderful after couple of years because of COVID, we couldn't do it. And I know they're probably on Zoom, but the three Ls, Brett and Katie and Katerina, want to give them full marks for and all the volunteers, you know, and for a great night. It was just incredible, and it was cold, but boy, there was a lot of warm hearts out there and so forth. And again, partnership with the Optimist Club again, you know, and so forth. But extend our thanks to the town staff. You know, I mean, every festival that we've or opportunities and things that we've done over the course of the year, staff have gone above and beyond. And they certainly deserve not only our thanks here, but the community at large for putting on these wonderful festivals and anniversaries and so forth. So. And we got to thank you, Paul, because at the end of the day, top of the pyramid is the leader. And so you've mentored those individuals quite well. And I see you when you march around the town hall here at 150 miles an hour. I don't know if you follow this guy or not, but you've got to really put a lasso on him. So thank you for your leadership as well. Oh, Councillor Tonio.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Couple things, the Corn Fest, the reinventing of it is so critical, and most of council has already talked about this, so I won't repeat too much of it, but I do believe that we need to change what we've been doing for the last 70 years. It's been basically the same format. So I'm glad they're going to do that and move forward to it. And I believe our relationship with our service groups, especially the Optimist Club, the hard work Paul and his team have done, I think together we will make a great Corn Fest in the future coming for our residents, giving them what they want to have in their community. A few things, there is no events in my ward on any of our parks, so it'd be nice to put something, maybe movie night or one of in our parks, but I know Rochelo Park and Southfield Park and Buster Rian Park, we have no events in those. And I don't think there's anything in my ward. I could be wrong. So it'd be nice to have something moved into our ward, maybe of Ward 3. So, and then also I spoke with Keith over at the cafe. We were talking about maybe like a football theme in the fall. And I can work with Brett on that and discuss what I'm thinking on that. But I thought maybe it'd be nice to get all the families out with their favorite uniforms on, a football, soccer, whatever. Figure out a theme in the fall time to get together. So those are my points there. Thank you.
And just to Councillor Tono through the mayor, yes, we are looking at expanding further. As you recall, in our 5-year capital plan, there were some enhancements for Southfield Park, which will make it a more opportunistic location, and those you will see shortly when the 5-year capital comes up again for council's approval during the budget process.
Councillor Higginson.
Thank you very much, and through you, thank you, Paul, for the report. It was great to not only read through it and see all the things that are happening and but to visit it with my daughters. We come out to all of these that we can, and they come out to them with their friends. And I've noticed over the past, just this past year, the types of events that are there. We really do bring out ages and ages. Members of it, so it's an action, especially and moving forward with some of those. My question was about Cornfest, and this question may be better answered by the Optimist Club or by the partnership that you guys have, but I know going door to door is one of the questions that I have a lot about bringing it back and really passionate about it. And so what is the plan for communicating this out to residents, the change that will happen, and how this sort of partnership is going to evolve over time?
First off, I'm certain the media will have this on tomorrow. It'll be all over the news. So there's your first action. There'll certainly be, social media, information on the website. It will be communicated out to the community. And once again, I just have to reiterate that the Optimist Club is looking, it'll be a festival. It'll be, have similar, some of the aspects of the Corn Festival, but there may be some new twists to it. So I think that certainly it will be advertised and it will be out there, but I think tomorrow you'll see quite a bit of the mayor's phone probably and the deputy mayor.
I appreciate that. And just supplemental to that, I think we've heard around the table here that the Optimist Club has our support in it. And I think that would be a really good point to make in all of our communications, that the Optimist Club has our support in the reinvention of it. And that we're looking forward to it as well.
The old system I like better. I could leave it on. Move the recommendation, Deputy Mayor McKetty. Do I support Councillor Houston? Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Next report is CRS 2022-16, Conseil scolaire catholique Providence, Lessau High School Agreement Amendment. Mr. Anthony.
Again, Mayor McNamara, members of council, this report brings to you a new revised agreement with the Catholic School Board regarding the soccer fields. So as council will recall, in the past, we had a lease agreement with Lesour and the French Catholic Board for the main fields, which are adjacent to between Lesour High School and Zares. Over the last number of years, there's been certainly a growth in soccer in our community and a requirement for some additional playing surfaces. A couple of years ago, prior to COVID or just before COVID hit, we sat down with the Catholic Board and we looked at the field that runs along the old Tecumseh Road, which is the south field. It was always very saturated, very much they couldn't play. They used it for football practice once in a while, but they always tore up the turf. So we partnered with that to put in new drainage, which made that field certainly much more playable. And so our groups have been able to use that. Once we did that, we met with the Lesour and the director, and we've asked that we have the agreement, number one, include the additional field in the same terms that were there in the past. And secondly, that we change the agreement and extend it to, I believe, out to 45, I believe it is. So there's a couple things. The agreement will be expanded in time frame, and it'll also add the extra fields or the extra field to the agreement under the same terms. You'll note in the agreement as well, there were some things that were removed, and that was in the original agreement. There were bare fields and the town was committed to put in parking and develop the soccer fields. That was all done. So we did have that removed from this agreement as well, because our obligations were met and the rest of the terms. The last thing, there was a 25-year clause after the agreement would end that the town would have the right to purchase the property, have the first refusal to purchase the property. However, as you'll all recall, through the Education Act, that has changed, and school properties now cannot be offered out to individuals. There's a process. They have to be offered first to other school boards, and then it would come to the municipality and so on. So those were the changes to the agreement. I'm open for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Anthony. Any questions or comments on the report as presented? Then a motion to adopt the report. Councilor Houston, Councilor Higginson, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay. Next report, our Community Safety and Fire Services Emergency Management appointment. And we have our chief make the presentation.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to members of council. The report tonight is intended to address some of the requirements under the Emergency Management Civil Protection Act. The act requires that council appoint certain positions with respect to emergency management for the town. Those positions being the Community Emergency Management Coordinator, an Emergency Management Program Committee to oversee our emergency program for the town, an emergency control group to actually direct actions and response during an emergency, and an emergency information officer. Excuse me. The previous bylaw that had appointed some of the positions positions by name, individuals, specific individuals. You'll see the bylaw that's been prepared for this report appoints positions, specific positions for under the act. And that is permitted as long as they're not general terms like a public works worker. It has to be the director of public works. So tonight we're just asking council to approve the community emergency management coordinator as myself, the emergency management program committee being composed of the mayor, a CAO, the emergency management coordinator, director of community recreation services, director of public works and engineering services, and the detachment commander from OPP. The emergency control group as the mayor, CAO, emergency management coordinator, all of the senior management team, with the addition of the OPP detachment commander and chief of Windsor EMS, Windsor Essex EMS, and the communications officer as our emergency information officer as well. We're just asking tonight for council to receive the report and to adopt the bylaw at the appropriate time. I'm available for questions if there are any.
All right, thank you, Chief. Any questions or comments? Go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. And through you, the only question I have is back in 2020 or 2021, there was a time where yourself and the deputy were both away at a conference. And I know I was kind of on standby. I believe it was during, flooding. So in the case of if, mayor is away, does it automatically default? Do we need any kind of overlap in case of absence with any of these?
Go ahead, Chief.
Through your worship to Councillor Houston. Alternates are identified in the emergency response plan. And the way we are revising the plan this year, we'll bring it forward to council for approval later probably in 2023. The alternates are identified 3 deep, and we believe that's sufficient for purposes.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Then a motion on the report, moved by Councilor Tonio, Councilor Higginson, support. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Okay, next report, item 3A is the development services. At the S 2022-32 zoning bylaw amendment for 12106 Tecumseh Road, scheduling of a public meeting. Mr. Hillman. A gorgeous building.
Oh, yes.
This is a unbelievable, nice project.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chad Jeffrey's remote in his office. And he is going to present this, but what I don't understand is if he's there. There we go. All right.
Technology is
Thank you,
wonderful,
and I
isn't it?
apologize.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. So Flatiron.
You beef up the volume.
Can you hear me okay? Mr. Mayor, can you hear me okay?
I think at our end here, I think we're good. We're going to turn up the volume.
All right. Just let me know when I can begin.
Now we got you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Great. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Flatiron Windsor Incorporated, the applicants in this case own a 0.9 acre vacant parcel of land. And if you go to attachment 1, please. You'll see the parcel outlined in orange. There it is. And it's on the north side of Tecumseh Road at its intersection with Poisson Street. It's known municipally as 12106 Tecumseh Road. The applicants are seeking to amend the Tecumseh zoning bylaw to change the zoning from general commercial C3 to a defined area general commercial C3-17. And that C3-17 would accommodate the development of the subject property for a 5-story, 40-unit mixed-use residential commercial building. And the approximate location of that building is highlighted in yellow on that attachment. You can go to attachment 2. You'll see the preliminary site plan. And it shows the building, which has an approximate footprint of roughly 10,000 square feet. And it includes a 1,700 square foot commercial unit at the front that has direct access onto Tecumseh Road. There are 59 parking spaces associated with this development, 50 of which are allocated to the residential component, and 9 of which are allocated to the commercial unit. And those are predominantly surface parking units to the west and to the north of the building, behind the building, and to the side of it. And 17 of those 59 spaces are within a ground level covered parking area behind the commercial unit. There's also approximate 40-foot wide buffer along the railway corridor with a retaining wall to form a berm. And you can see there's provisions for future access to abutting properties to the east and west from that parking space. On attachment 3, you'll get a better vision of the building through the architectural rendering. At the top of that attachment is a view facing northeast from Tecumseh Road. And you can see the ground floor commercial area. Above the ground floor commercial area are 2 floors of amenity areas. They're each 1,700 square feet in area. And then above those is an open outdoor amenity area for the residents of the building. The building has a step back design, so it's 3 stories along Tecumseh Road, stepping back to 5 stories beyond that. And that's in keeping with the architectural guidance of the Tecumseh Road Main Street Commercial Improvement Plan. There's a sidewalk along the westerly side that provides access to the commercial unit and to the main entranceway of the residential portion of the building at the northwest corner of the building. Some other information related to the development that's not depicted in the plan is that the 40 units are 1 bedroom and they're approximately 650 square feet in area. The refuse and recycling will all be internal to the building, so there won't be any outdoor refuse storage. It has a density of approximately 114 units per hectare, which in accordance with the Tecumseh official plan is considered to be high density. Attachment 4 shows the area surrounding the subject property. And you can see that it's predominantly commercial in nature surrounding it. It's part of what is known as, it's actually in the heart of what is known as the Tecumseh Road Main Street Commercial Improvement Planning Area. To the north is Via Rail, beyond which there's a light industrial / commercial building, to the west of which is the municipal dog park and the arena. The area in red is all identified as commercial. There are a few vacant parcels, 1 directly across the road from it. 2 parcels to the east is the municipal parking lot. But for the most part, the surrounding area is commercial in nature. During pre-consultation with the applicants, a number of supporting documents were identified as necessary, including a traffic impact and parking brief, a road and rail traffic and stationary noise impact study, and a vibration assessment report on rail ground vibrations. And administration has reviewed these reports, and we generally concur with the findings of those reports. The traffic impact and parking brief said that there will be no adverse impact on the area traffic operations, and that there are no on-street improvements required, and that the proposed 59 spaces, parking spaces, is adequate for the development. Of course, comments from the railway will be important during the review process and prior to going to the public meeting. We've done a preliminary review of the proposal in the context of the relevant policy documents, which include the provincial policy statement and the county official plan and the town's official plan. And from a growth management, housing, transportation, economic prosperity, climate change and energy conservation perspective, this proposal checks a lot of policy boxes. It's an example of infill in a fully serviced area, creates a compact built form. It makes more efficient use of existing services and provides an alternative form of housing. And it's walkable and transit supportive. So from a policy perspective, we support the development on a preliminary basis. Of course, we'll need to go to a public meeting to hear from interested stakeholders and address any comments that might arise through that process. On attachment 6, you'll see the zoning, and it's, as I mentioned earlier, it's currently general commercial C3. The C3 zone permits mixed use commercial residential, but not at the density that's proposed through this development. And that's why there's a need to change the zoning from C3 to C3-17 to facilitate this construction. The proponents will also have to go through a site plan control process, and at that stage, we'll address site servicing in more detail, including stormwater management and other site amenities. So to conclude, Mr. Mayor, members of council, the policy encourages compact mixed use and efficient development, and this development represents all of those things. The public meeting under the Planning Act will give us an opportunity to receive stakeholder and agency input. And following the public meeting, we anticipate doing another report that will summarize the issues raised there and provide a final recommendation to council at a future meeting. So all this report is doing at this time, and Mr. Mayor is recommending that council authorize the scheduling of a public meeting on Tuesday, December 13th, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. to consider the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application. Those are my comments, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Jeffries. Any questions or comments? And you've heard the recommendation, comments? Question, go ahead, Councilor Houston.
Thank you, Your Worship, and to you, Chad. 2 questions, and I don't want to, blend into the next report at all, but this development as it is for us today, is it potentially impacted at all by any of the proposed changes that Bill 23 is contemplating?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Houston. I think Bill 23 would probably provide even more support for development like this, but there would be implications, and I know that Brian will get into those implications during his report with respect to development charges and other matters.
Oh.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Sorry, this is a little getting used to this process. A very good question. What comes to mind very quickly are a couple of things. One, you saw architectural renderings that were provided with this. The changes that are proposed, at least as I understand their status right now, that would not be something where the municipality would be able to include those as part of your site plan approval. We found that to be a very effective tool. I think some of the developments that we've seen in town are of a very high standard. And part of the success of that is you have to acknowledge we have a very strong development community who aspire to produce very high quality developments. But at the same time, lands can transfer hands, different owners can purchase them. And once the regulatory environment's in place to permit development, and the site plan agreement can't include those types of details, they no longer are within the purview of the municipality to control. And we think those are very important to the quality of the community. The other issue would become really one, and so to be clear, the proposal of site plan control would not be able to include those types of regulations, and we've used them quite successfully and haven't had any pushback. I think the question becomes also around if there are affordable units currently throughout the municipality, those would continue to pay a development charge. Notwithstanding, this is in the CIP area, and it's an area with a very very focused intent, and we are looking at providing some exceptions for this very unique area. But if that were to come into effect in terms of the exemptions provided under the Planning Act and the Development Charges Act, portions of the development maybe wouldn't pay a development charge. Those are the two that come to mind.
You want to add?
Yeah.
Supplement.
Yeah, if I could. So appreciate everything that that Mr. Hillman has said, but keep in mind that Bill 23 is a bill. And so timing is really of the essence in this case, even if it receives royal assent. It's when it's promulgated and has its regulatory framework that it comes into effect. So we have an opportunity here to keep this one moving along and get ahead of that game.
Thank you. And my second question, just regarding the traffic study, I do note that it was completed in August of 2022. So I don't know if if that traffic study would be impacted at all by the revisions that we've done on Tecumseh Road. I don't know. I'm not a traffic engineer, but I just wanted to verify since we did those changes after August 2022.
I was going to say, maybe defer this to Mr. Bartnick.
And if I could, Mr. Mayor, while
Okay.
Mr. Barton's coming up, I always want to wear an engineer's ring, and I'm not an engineer. But I would just note, one of the things that we've realized with the traffic analysis that we've undertaken on Tecumseh Road, it always takes into account the fact that on the north side of the road, there are periods where that is a parking area. As confusing as that sounds, and as maybe perhaps unclear it is providing that opportunity. So, their analysis takes that into account. So I'll just put that on the table.
Thank you through your worship. So I guess Mr. Hellman did steal my response. But yes, when the traffic study was conducted, there was part-time parking, I think, from Tecumseh Road all the way to Shawnee. So that would have been taken into account. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, any further questions or comments to Mr. Jeffries? Hearing none, then as the CAO said, we need to march on. November 22nd for the meeting, moved by Councilor Houston. Do I support? Councilor Tonio? All in favor? Oppose? That is carried. Thank you. Okay. Mr. Hillman, I believe, is back up on the Development Services 2022-44 Bill 23, the More Homes Built Faster Act summary.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. So quite a lengthy report that has been provided to council. And so the intention is not to go through it in significant detail. What I would propose is that we do a high level review and then make myself available for questions. This report is with respect to Bill 23, the More Homes Built Faster Act that has been put out now for comment by the province of Ontario. It affects the Planning Act, Development Charges Act, the Conservation Authorities Act, and the Ontario Land Tribunal Act. And fundamentally, what we try to summarize is the impact that it's going to have on the town, which includes changes to planning processes, reductions in municipal DC revenues, and the potential for associated increases in tax and rates, and increased demands on staff and potential need for specialized services to supplement services currently provided by the Conservation Authority. This report, to be clear, is not individually prepared. You'll see that Chad was the lead on the report in the planning area, along with myself, but we include finance, given the nature of these changes, public works and engineering, and certainly the CAO's office. And we rely on support from Watson & Associates. We've attached their materials to the document. They have provided to the town very significant input on a number of financial related documents over the years, and have really taken upon a lead role in trying to understand the impacts of this legislation. So we've included that. They've made that available to all Ontario municipalities that are their clients, which are many, and also our various professional affiliations. So this is, we hope, somewhat has quite a breadth to it. I just happen to be the one making a presentation this evening on it and taking the lead in that regard. So, and we truly do want to acknowledge that, the spirit of Bill 23 is to promote affordable housing and try to quickly increase the supply for those who are really left behind in today's housing market, which we know is an issue that is facing all municipalities in Ontario. And the government has attempted to achieve that. With that being said, our report highlights the impacts on the town and its residents. And from a very high level, I'd like to review the changes, and with the caveat that this is going through a process at the province, not unlike us making decisions, and it's in committee right now. And I understand there are some changes that may have been made or intentions to make changes that may be different from what I'm going to be speaking to here this evening. But it's quite a fluid and quite a quick moving piece of legislation. So I will just emphasize I'm responding to Bill 23 in terms of how it was, I think it was first reading that we're responding to. So very high level, there's really three areas I'd like to speak to around planning, development charges, and conservation authorities. And in the planning area, there's a number of parts of the act that we make reference to. The ones I'd like to make reference to this evening as a presentation is that there will be no further third-party appeals. We understand that may actually be changing. And what that meant, if it were to come into effect, is that a third party is a resident to an application that would come before town council, whether it be a rezoning, an official plan amendment, a plan of subdivision, and a third party would no longer, a citizen would no longer have rights to appeal. And the thought was that the only parties that would be the applicant. Council hasn't made a decision, or council's putting conditions on that are inappropriate to the Ontario Land Tribunal, which is the appeal body. So that was being removed, and it has been the subject of considerable debate, and it looks like they may pull back on that change. In addition, in the planning area, there are as of right 3 residential units per property, and fully serviced areas are now more explicitly, clearly permitted. The change, though, that we see is right now we have just completed introducing and putting into effect a housekeeping bylaw for all the zoning bylaws in the town of Tecumseh. And we do permit 3 units in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act right now. But we do have regulations pertaining to them, and that does allow us to control to a certain extent what type of development can happen with we call them accessory additional residential units, or ARUs. And that's helpful in terms of ensuring that the character of our neighborhoods are somewhat, maintained. The Bill 23 is in an effort to expedite housing growth and opportunities, removing those types of regulations and basically saying that you can have 3 units on a property as long as it's fully serviced. There are really a fundamental change to who controls the location of parkland, and this is somewhat concerning. The transfer that's proposed is that the developer would be able to say the park will go over here. That historically has, what history has taught us is that quite often is the piece of land that's sort of challenging for the developer to figure out what can we do with this land, and it's sort of often a remnant piece. And as we can all appreciate, parks are a very important aspect to our communities, both in terms of the desirability to live there and the well-being of our citizens. So we think it's very important that these legacy decisions, which are really long-term, are left in the hands of council. Now, the act does establish that if a developer puts a park or proposes one in a location that's not deemed suitable by the municipality, we can appeal that or encourage council to recommend council appeal that to the OLT. But number one, that's not very efficient. And number two, that's really displaced. It's offsetting to the relationship that should be happening, which is council should determine these fundamental important public features that are for the benefit of our municipalities. The exemption of affordable, attainable, and nonprofit housing from parkland dedications. This just seems counterintuitive. Typically when we're dealing with these types of housing formats, they are quite often they can be medium density up to high density, and usually that's resulting in a form of housing that is has less outdoor amenity space, and parks are a very important part of offering to those residents a place to recreate and socialize and so on. So we do feel that that's a little bit of a counterintuitive approach. With respect to development charges, the premise, as was discussed earlier this evening, the premise is that as growth happens, it impacts our infrastructure, and we need to make improvements to our infrastructure to ensure that that growth is properly handled. So we go through very detailed studies that identify if we grow this much, we need these improvements to our infrastructure, and that ultimately leads to an evaluation of what are the development charges required to be paid at the time of development, so that we can ensure we have the money available to pay for the infrastructure improvements. Significant changes are proposed in this area. And again, we acknowledge there is an effort to try and create a scenario where affordable housing has the benefit of not paying a development charge. And that's for both affordable, attainable, and not-for-profit housing. But that does create a funding gap. We aren't able to quantify that funding gap right now, and there isn't a definition provided yet for what constitutes attainable housing. But there would be a funding gap, and the only option currently available, if the funding gap exists between the needs and of what needs to be built, is for the taxpayer or the ratepayer to fill that gap. The definition of affordable is changing from the provincial policy statement, and there's not a clear rationale provided for the change, and there is no definition, as I said, for attainable housing. So it's really difficult to measure some of these impacts that are going to happen to the municipality. There are reductions in DCs due to mandatory phase-in at the time of a new bylaw. So when we do a new bylaw, council does always have the option of, if there's a significant increase for certain classes of development, of not putting the increase in effect on day one. It can phase those in over time, but that's a council decision, and it's based on council's will, any number of financial reasons. What the act is basically saying is that when we do a new development charge bylaw, and if we're showing that we need to have higher development charges to properly fund the capital infrastructure improvements, we are required by the act to phase those increases in. And therefore, there's a delay in the funds coming into the municipality, and that would cause strain on our financial capacity to build those pieces of infrastructure. And another one that's concerning is studies are no longer, that would support growth, are no longer included in the DC charge. So right now, there are a number of studies that we have to undertake in order to determine what infrastructure is required. It could be anything from an official plan to various municipal class EAs. Those cost money. They often have to be done by outside consultants, and those are required in order to support growth. And if we can't finance that through a development charge, then we have to put that somewhere. It has to be funded somewhere. So it's the taxpayer or the ratepayer on the water rates, water, wastewater. And then finally, just wanted to make note, and again, it came up earlier this evening around the conservation authorities and the general shift away from natural heritage protection and a focus on natural hazard matters. That's important, but it really does take away the emphasis of our natural heritage systems that we're trying to protect, that have long-term value to for not only natural heritage reasons, but to our communities and to our residents. And can really adversely affect the ecological function of these features. And they do actually have value in terms of catastrophic flooding and protecting important wildlife habitat. And we've heard the words this evening already around climate change and sustainability, and these features are important to ensuring that those matters are properly addressed. So there's some concerns around that as well. But just before I go to the recommendations of the report, I do want to note that we've had regard to the recommendation, and we do feel that in addition to our hope is that it would be forwarded, that the report be received and that it be submitted to the province to the Environmental Registry of Ontario as comments from the town of Tecumseh on Bill 23. We do think there's great value in having a letter prepared that would be sent to MPP Andrew Dowie, and ask him to advocate on our behalf with the appropriate ministers. And to let them know of our concerns through that means. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'd be happy to take any questions or address any comments.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the report, Mr. Hillman. No doubt. Still, it's a lot of unanswered questions, and I don't know when in terms it'll receive royal assent, but there's no doubt. I see some good things in it, in the bill itself, but I see other where I think the sustainability of the infrastructure required to support our obviously the growth, and there could be some challenges there in dealing with that. And we always look at even when we go through the budget shortly, I know that Mr. Kitsos will tell us, in certain areas on wastewater and so forth, that we need to, a lot of it was because of DCs that, we've drawn down on certain projects and waiting to make that up through DCs. And if they're going to be affected, obviously we're going to have to build those reserve funds through other means, which is when you look at municipalities, there's not too many, and it's property taxes and so forth. I guess the question I have too, and you know, that the whole piece about affordable. Okay, we all know that and in your report, you've alluded to that the threshold is X, you know, 343 or 83 or whatever, 1,000 and so forth. There was some questions that were asked about is that the threshold, you know, that affordability, and then where the DCs would come into question. And so do they look at, I mean, obviously houses and subdivisions are done individually, but I'm looking at if we have kind of an integrated subdivision where obviously you got to put all the services in and so forth, right? And the additional, and then so you've got affordable housing, you got you know, high end, and it's kind of integrated in the area. I don't know if the government thought of, you know, how do you pick and choose in terms of you're going to pay for growth, and then the person across the street is, well, not necessarily, you won't pay for growth, and then the next person, so forth. So how, because realistically that this is what they're, you know, if we're going to look at intensification, doing the, you know, the provincial policy and building the homes the way they want them to be built, in that you're going to have to see a lot more integration in terms of the different class, I call different classes of homes within the area. So that's where I have really some concerns, and how because at the end of the day we have to defend whatever that provincial policy is.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there are some significant challenges. Ultimately, development in Ontario, in Tecumseh, is constructed by private developers, and they purchase land. Sometimes they finance it over a period of time, waiting for approvals, waiting for any number of things, and then they develop the land. They build the infrastructure to our standards, which is then transferred to us. They become municipal roads, municipal infrastructure. That all costs money. They're not, you know, they're in the business to make money, and that's how our systems work in Ontario and in Canada. So then they have to sell the land to someone to build a home. So there's value in the land, and it does become something of a complex process when the determinant is 80% of the average housing price in the housing market, and something below the 80 is deemed affordable. Now, we haven't really seen for certain the final number that would be used. That would be generated by a bulletin from the province, but it really speaks to the complexity of how you would arrive at that, because it seems to have taken away, and granted, we have not been provided any level of in-servicing on this. So, but on the face of it, it seems to take away the notion of equating affordability to your capacity to pay for housing, because we all have expenses around, and we all have incomes, and we all have expenses: food, shelter, transportation, and it's really gone down to just linking it to an average housing price, and there's a line below which it's deemed to be affordable, and whether it is affordable is a question, and how one achieves, how the developer pulls out of that equation and still is making money may very well be something that you're speaking to. But then the question becomes, what's the driver to build the house is qualifying as affordable? And I think it just goes to affordable housing is such a challenging issue that it commonly deals with federal, provincial, municipal, and other nonprofit bodies quite often, because it's just not the business developers are usually in. So that's really the challenge that we face with this process.
Because I hope at the end of all of this, it's not, I mean, I understand the issue of the amount of houses we got to build in that, but I'm hoping that both federally and provincially, but here's more provincially because of their legislation, it's not going to be left to the municipalities to really pick up the heavy lifting. And to me, part of that bill is exactly that. We're going to be asked to pick up some heavy lifting, because in terms of building more stock in social housing or affordable housing, in that, I think there's a responsibility from both those orders of government to be spending a lot more. in dealing with that. So they're asking the private sector to do their part, and the private sector is saying, yeah, we can do it. But you know, if you can reduce our costs in terms of development charges and that, then we can make it more affordable. Who's going to monitor who's going to be realizing those savings? Will it be the consumer at the end of the day, or is it going to be the bank account of the builders? And that's, you know, again, it's in the back of your mind. You know, I mean, I know I'm not immune to profits. I think it's important, but I really believe that the legislation hopefully is not going to be sped up, that at the end of the day, we're going to find out that the municipalities are going to be held more in terms of that responsibility. Councilor Higginson.
Thank you very much. And thank you to you and the full team for this report. This is a huge bill to kind of wrap your mind around. And I'm sure as I'm wrapping my mind around it, it's changing under our feet. And it's directly under our feet, which is, I think, the thing that concerns me the most. There's many parts of the bill that I could kind of go through to just kind of alert that we should be on high alert for some of the things that are in here. The loss of jurisdiction and regulation over significant built environment and planning matters in our own municipality is a huge red flag. Things like tree cover and parking lots and parking spots and pedestrian access and stormwater management are all things that we've dealt with or that you've dealt with around this table. And the fact that those things are kind of lifted out of our jurisdiction while they affect not only our bottom lines, but certainly the lived experiences of our residents is a huge issue. Reduction in parkland, the CA 1 through 4 in the report and the letter from IRCA warning of decimation of environmental protections. This is a huge concern. And so I hope that we are drafting a letter that goes along with this very excellent report and summary that really outlines our concerns because I think they're deep and they're long lasting. So I do have a couple questions for administration, and they may be nothing so you can necessarily answer, but there's a piece in there that's talking about the asset management plan, and it's a piece that we have had at our town long before some municipalities have had theirs. But how realistic is that asset management plan now, given what we cannot ensure that development charges will cover? And I think I know the answer to this, but where does the revenue for that come for payment of that asset management plan?
Very good question. Thank you, Councillor. And Tom is right over my shoulder. So I'll give the the planner's version of the answer, because he and I talked quite a bit about this, and as did his team. The short answer is, I think what we tried to illustrate in our document is that the asset management plan as a fundamental document is always underfunded. That's the messaging that I get from Tom and that he communicates to council. It's basically assuming that we know there are funding sources, federally, provincially, our own ways of generating revenue, but you don't know what they are necessarily, especially the federal provincial piece. So there's an assumption always that there's a level of underfunding, and what government's in and what they're doing will affect that. And generally over time, we make out okay. That's sort of my version of how that works. But when you take away one of the funding sources knowingly, you know it has to be picked up somewhere else. So that's kind of, I think, the short answer there, that if we think we're going to be slightly underfunding on the DC side, then that means something else has to make up somewhere else. And Tom, if you'd like to add anything to that, please feel free.
Thanks, Brian, and through the mayor to Councillor Higginson. So what Brian said, yes, I agree entirely. And I guess the point would be that with our asset management plan, there are some unknowns when it comes to funding. So there's grants from the province or the federal government can come unexpected, and we don't know which programs they'll support. So that already is an unknown in our asset management plan. So one thing that is known is development charges. So that adds another question mark. So really, it brings more unknowns, uncertainty.
Just supplementary, you can hang out there, actually. So supplementary to that, and thank you for that for both of you. I know we're anticipating our budget documents, and that administration is deep into the preparation of those. This may be an impossible question, but can you quantify or qualify the risks to even our anticipated budget should this bill pass prior to or directly following its approval?
Yeah, sorry, the easy answer is yeah, it's difficult to make those predictions.
I appreciate that. It also puts the onus on all of us to think deeply about those, and I can appreciate from your perspectives and your department's perspectives that even thinking about the possibility of presenting us a budget that may have to be significantly revisited is of deep concern to you, and so I wish you luck in that, and my colleagues as well. But I think a strongly worded letter is absolutely in order.
Go
Thank
ahead,
you.
Councilor Houston.
Yep, thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Mr. Hillman. Thank you for the report. It's a great summary of I guess the proposed changes that are currently being decided. I've even went to the government's website, and it is an enormous bill. So having this summary, I can appreciate the time and effort that went into it to summarize it. So I certainly appreciate that. Well, one thing I do believe in the financiers are absolutely a concern, and I think it's something which is potentially out there. We don't know again what those are, but I do believe the province has asked the federal government to cover any impact to the provinces. I recall hearing that out there, so I'm hopeful that there is collaboration, right, from upper levels on both sides, right, to lessen any impact that the municipality has. And to your point earlier, developers typically aren't in the business of social housing. And we've had a lot of high caliber, developments here in town. So I'm just, I'm thinking in my mind, as the developments that we've seen over the past 2 years, if we were to, look back, how many of those that we know have went in the ground, and it might be an exercise down the road once we know where Bill 23 lands, is, there were some changes yesterday, and as I understand, there's and I understand there's probably going to be a bunch more changes before we know exactly where the chips fall. But I was thinking in my mind, if we go back 1 year, 2 years, and we look at it and run an analysis and look at how many, developments pre and post would be impacted, I think it'll be a number that will tell a true story for us. But I understand right now there's a lot of what ifs, right, for us. So, I guess I'm just waiting to see where things land to know exactly what the impact is. And we will not be alone, from the, the changes that this bill will, have on, all of us in the region. So we're just going to have to figure out what the new rules essentially are and work within those. So those are my comments.
Further questions or comments? And hearing none, then there is a recommendation that report DS 2244, Bill 23, More Homes Built Faster 2022 summary report be received, and that the report DS 2022-44 be submitted to the province through the Environmental Registry of Ontario as comments from the town of Tecumseh on Bill 23. Known as the letter.
Oh, well, plus the letter to the MPP.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Just to be clear, I took it, there's a few letters flying around. One was a request from Council Higginson which I think this is council's position. And then I had mentioned the appropriateness of probably sending a letter to our MPP as well. Okay,
And that's when I said
that's
the
captured.
letter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was the letter. Yeah.
She chirping in my ears.
It's
But
cool.
anyway, yeah. Okay, so on the motion as amended with the letter, moved by Councillor Tonio, Councillor Higginson, support. All in favor? Oppose if any of that is carried. Thank you. C is done. All right, item D, DS 2022-46, Tecumseh Lakeshore Shared Commercial Economic Development Strategy, the 2023 implementation program. So is it Chad?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Back in January of this year, council endorsed the Tecumseh Lakeshore Shared Commercial Economic Development Strategy. This strategy was prepared by McSweeney and Associates, economic development consultants, under the direction of a steering committee that included both Tecumseh and Lakeshore staff members and a representative of Windsor Essex Small Business and Entrepreneurship Center. The goal of the strategy was to establish a harmonized economic development program focusing on growth and sustainability of 3 commercial districts in our area. And those districts are the Tecumseh Main Street, which is just a simpler way of saying the Tecumseh Road Main Street Community Improvement Planning Area, because it aligns with that community improvement planning area. The second area is the Les Brunt South District, which includes the Tecumseh Town Center, Plaza, and Home Hardware on the south side of County Road 22 along Les Brunt's Road. And then finally, the Manning Road, Amy Croft districts, which is Manning Road from St. Gregory's to the north to all the way to County Road 22 to the south, the entirety of Amy Croft commercial area, and the commercial district along the Tecumseh Road corridor from just east of Manning Road to Bonwell to the west. And there was a special focus on that area due to its shared geography, but separate jurisdiction between Tecumseh and Lakeshore. There was extensive research conducted by the consultants, and there were many consultations with various stakeholders from both the local and regional business community. And as a result of that research and consultations, 29 action items were identified to be carried out over the next 5 years. And those action items flow predominantly from 3 distinct goals, which are collaborating, connecting, creating a destination, and finally branding, communicating, and marketing. And the purpose of this report tonight is to identify the actions that we're proposing to undertake for 2023, beginning with establishing an annual budget allocation for local economic development. It's new to the town. So we want to establish that budget, including an initial one-time allocation of $25,000 for a special project to develop distinct branding for the 3 commercial districts that I mentioned. Another action item concerns the alignment of policies and bylaws in the Manning Road and Amy Croft district between Lakeshore and Tecumseh, beginning with the zoning bylaws. And we're currently in the process of preparing a new zoning bylaw. And Lakeshore and Tecumseh use the same consultant, so that should be relatively easy to ensure that those 2 documents are aligned. They present a seamless and consistent commercial district on our shared border. A third action item involves the development of consistent economic development content on both websites. Lakeshore has a fairly robust section in its website concerning economic development, and we're going to work with Lakeshore to develop the same thing for the town of Tecumseh. We also want to streamline the municipal processes and customer service for investors to expedite planning, building, and inspection services. And then we're going to hope to work with the Small Business and Entrepreneurship Center and other local and regional agencies to promote grants and programs to businesses in those commercial districts. We want to work with the Tecumseh BIA to identify opportunities to collaborate on small business advertising and promotion in the districts. And then finally, over 2023, we hope to consider the effective integration of the delivery of transit service for Tecumseh Transit and a potential future lakeshore transit system. So all these initiatives will require a high degree of coordination with Lakeshore's Economic Development and Mobility Division Leader, as well as with the Tecumseh BIA manager and other partners. And these initiatives will have to be balanced against other efforts that myself as the local economic development officer is leading with respect to the implementation of 5-year capital works that are intended to advance development opportunities throughout the town. So, Mr. Mayor, the recommendation, including this report, is that it be received and that the final approval and implementation of the programs proposed for implementation in 2023, identified in the report, be referred to the 2023 budget deliberations. Those are my comments, Mr. Mayor. I make myself available for any questions you may have.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Jeffrey. Any questions or comments on the report? Go ahead, Councilor Houston.
Thank you, Worship, through you to Mr. Jeffries. Thank you for the report. I think it is timely as we know that the BIA will form a new board and they will be doing some strategic planning for the new term. And I think this just represents a great opportunity for the BIA to partner and be involved in a project. They may also have some funds to contribute to, I guess, increase the effectiveness of this program. And it's nice to see now the sort of the final result or the plan of the consultation that we had earlier on. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what may come of this and the impacts, on the 3 areas that have been identified. So thank you.
Okay, any further questions or comments? Then we're looking for a motion then to refer to our 23 budget. Councilor Tonio and Councilor Jobin, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Thank you. All right, financial services, the Financial Service 2022-10, the Essex Power Lines Corporation Long-Term Financing Agreement renewal. Maybe for the benefit of our new members, that the debenture that we hold and explain where that's come from and the benefits of us holding it.
Sure, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of council. So this report pertains to the renewal of an existing long-term financing agreement with Essex Power Lines that will expire in December 2022. Administration is recommending that council receive this report and that council authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a long-term financing agreement between the town and Essex Power Lines through bylaw 2022-085 on tonight's agenda that will renew the current arrangement for a new 5-year term. So the report details the history of this arrangement. So in short, there was a promissory note issued by Essex Power Lines to the town resulting from the transfer of Tecumseh Public Utilities Commission assets to Essex Power Lines. So bylaw 2002-74 provided for a long-term financing agreement such that the town could defer repayment of the promissory note in lieu of annual interest payments. So that initial agreement ran from 2002 to 2007, so it was for 6 years, and has since been renewed for 5-year terms in 2007, 2012, and 2018. So this proposed agreement would be for another 5-year term for 2023 to 2027, and it would bear an annual interest rate of 4%. It also provides for the same repayment options as in the previous agreements. So with respect to the town's investment policy and the town's portfolio of investments, this long-term financing agreement is an authorized investment per our policy, and its value falls within our policy limit for medium-term investments. Administration has reviewed the proposed interest rate of 4% and finds it to be reasonable compared to other investments of similar risk and security. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Kitsos. Any questions or comments? Go ahead, Councillor Houston.
Thank you, Worship, and through you, Tom, and maybe even to the mayor. Is there any escalator, right? As I understand, it'll be 4% for 5 years and every year. So is there any, just because we are in such an inflationary interest period right now, is there any escalation clauses, or if the interest rate still keeps climbing, for it to change at all?
Through the mayor to Councillor Houston, no, there's not. So what you'll find right now, if you look in the market, current interest rates, so they are rising for short term, but medium and long term interest rates are actually quite flat. They're very near to the short term interest rates. So what we did find is this is comparable to what we would find to similar securities for that term.
Just add to that, I could tell you as the corporation itself would gladly, you know, for Tecumseh to come and get it, and they'll finance it someplace else, and they can get it at a better interest rate. I know at the very beginning in that, I think we used to get 6 or 8%. And they, you know, kind of renewed, and because obviously for them to go to TD Bank, for example, they could get it for a better rate. And so it's good for the town in that regards, but it's nice at any given time, if the municipality wants the money, then they just ask for it. And they gladly give us the money. Any further questions or comments? Any motion then to renew 5 years, Deputy Mayor Bichetti and Councillor Houston. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Mr. Kitsos, you're still on. And item 4B, our Financial Services 2022-11, 21 Annual Report on Investment and Cash Management.
Thank you. So this is our annual report to council on investment and cash management for the year 2021. Administration is recommending that this report be received by council for information. So the town's investment policy provides guidance for management of the town's surplus funds. An investment portfolio includes the following objectives. First is adherence to statutory requirements, which includes reporting requirements and eligible investments. Second is safety or preservation of capital, which includes maintaining a substantial portion of the town's portfolio in low risk investments. Third is maintaining liquidity, which includes consideration for timing of maturity dates, active secondary or resale markets, and healthy cash holdings. Fourth is competitive rates of return. So whereby rate of return is of secondary importance to legality, safety, and liquidity. Table 1 contains a listing of the town's investment portfolio as of December 2021 and includes comparative data for the prior 2 years. Overall, the town's portfolio is heavily weighted towards short-term, low-risk investments that had an average rate of return of 1.7% for 2021. Medium-term investments earned a rate of 3.96%, and our long-term investment in Essex Power Equity earned a rate of 4.02%. The town's investment in one investment program's equity portfolio is also considered a long-term investment and earned 13.5% in 2021. The town's investment in one equity portfolio has been limited to the investment of reserve funds identified for employee post-employment benefits. So our recent actuarial update completed this past year calculates the present value liability of retiree benefits to be approximately 8.5 million as compared to our one equity portfolio 2021 year-end valuation of 2.2 million. The town's comparative rates of return by investment term length compare favorably to applicable comparators as identified in the town's investment policy for both short and long-term investments. Actual investment income, excluding unrealized capital gains, totaled $1.6 million in 2021. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to take those.
Carried. All right, budget variance report as of August 2022. Mr. Kitsos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is the town's second of 3 annual budget variance reports. Administration recommends that financial services report FS 2022-12 budget variance report August 2022, showing a projected tax supported surplus of 483,000 and a rate supported deficit, that's for water and wastewater services, of $64,000 be received. The budget variance exercise includes department directors, managers review of year-to-date activity against budget and preparation of projections to year end. Departments review both operating and life cycle or capital budgets. As referenced in the report, the 2022 budget was prepared assuming that municipal programs and services would return to pre-pandemic levels and that any direct COVID-19 impact on financial operations would be identified through the variance exercise, with the exception of lottery licensing fees, where the 2022 budget was adopted assuming new reduced normal levels. The main body of the report highlights major operating variance drivers with a more detailed listing of all operating variances included in attachment 2. The major operating variances are expressed through 2 lenses. First, through department budget variance analysis illustrated with the waterfall, and that's on page 224. And that's chart in table 1, and next through corporate wide account category variance analysis as illustrated in table 2, which is on page 225. So both lead to the same result, and that is a $483,000 surplus. The main body also includes commentary on highlighted capital projects underway during 2022 with a detailed listing of all capital project variances included in attachments 3 and 4. Overall, administration is projecting a year-end surplus of $419,000 in the operating fund, which includes a tax-supported surplus of $483,000 and a rate-supported deficit of $64,000. Key drivers of the projected tax-supported surplus include grant revenues projecting favorable surplus of $437,000. So this is in part due to $145,000 of COVID-19 relief funding for municipalities grant that was deferred in 2021 and carried forward to 2022. Summer student grants, we had budgeted $46,000. We're projecting to receive $101,000. So that's an increase of $55,000. In transit, we recognize our CHCI grant of $27,000 for our on-demand pilot project. So those funds were received in 2021, however, deferred until 2022 for use as a pilot program kicked off in March. Our 100th anniversary, we earned $10,000 in grant funding above what had been budgeted for grants and an additional $30,000 above what had been budgeted for donations. And then there was also considerable grant funding through the Municipal Modernization Program, Intakes 2 and 3 programs that are ongoing through 2022. User fees and permits and charges. So that has an unfavorable variance of $261,000. So that table can be seen on page 222, I believe, or at least the paragraphs. Yeah. So user fees, permits and charges, unfavorable $261,000. So 2 major developments anticipated to commence during 2022 will proceed in early 2023. This results in a projected building permit fee shortfall of $174,000. COVID-19 impact operations is affecting revenues for lottery licensing, where we project a $28,000 shortfall, in addition to the $85,000 shortfall already included within the budget. Arena rentals revenue shortfall is projected at $64,000. That's largely due to a shutdown of the COVID shutdown in January of 2022. And the Provincial Offences Act fines has a shortfall of $53,000. Again, this seems related to COVID-19. However, there may also be some underlying downward trends in this area. Some of this shortfall, so the $28,000 in lottery licensing, $64,000 in ice rentals, and $53,000 in POA, which totals around $145,000, is intended to be offset by the use of our deferred COVID-19 relief grant funding. For salaries and benefits, we're showing a favorable variance of $130,000. So that's primarily due to some several lengthy staff vacancies totaling approximately $470,000. That's offset by significant increases to our health benefits, some retirement payouts and overtime pay of $340,000 in total. It is worth noting that some of the offsetting increases, so the retirement payouts and health benefits can be partially offset through transfers from reserves established for those purposes. In maintenance, materials and supplies, we're showing an unfavorable variance of $131,000. So gasoline and diesel are projecting unfavorable variance of $56,000. We had some significant storm sewer related infrastructure repairs projecting unfavorable variance of $26,000. And vehicle repairs are unfavorable variance of $30,000. So we had some major repair work for a couple of our public works vehicles. And lastly, we have net transfer to and from reserves showing an unfavorable variance of $532,000. So the bulk of this represents bank interest earned above our budgeted levels that is transferred to reserves. So it appears as an expenditure that is greater than budget. So that alone accounts for $351,000. Also included in that figure is approximately $90,000 of CIP Tecumseh Main Street grant funding. So that it was included within the 2022 budget. It has been committed, however, will not require payment until 2023. So that would be transferred to reserve as well. Key drivers of the rate supported operating deficit of $64,000 include wastewater contract services showing an unfavorable variance of $130,000. And that is due to higher than budgeted rate charged by the City of Windsor for wastewater treatment. The financial impact is partly offset by lower volumes treated. In water, we have a favorable variance in salaries and benefits of $191,000, resulting from multiple temporary vacancies. And that is offset somewhat by unfavorable cost of bulk water purchase of $27,000. With respect to the capital budget, capital projects are brought forward to council for approval via departmental 5-year capital plans. Our capital variance exercise includes a review of all active capital projects for the year. So that often includes carryover projects of prior years. In total, we have over 120 capital projects included in this variance report, having a total budgeted cost of $38 million. Project surplus or deficit will impact our life cycle reserve funds, resulting in lesser or greater life cycle reserve funding required as compared to budget. So within this variance report, we have included some commentary on some of the more notable capital projects undertaken for 2022. So I won't go through all of that commentary for those projects. However, I will highlight that we have experienced inflationary pressure this past year, which we've not experienced for some time. That is noted specifically in the Riverside Drive Trail, Tecumseh Road storm and road improvements, and County Road 4243 construction projects, where costs are expected to exceed our budgeted cost in excess of $4 million. In summary, this variance report is in line with our June or Q2 variance report and projections. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to take those.
All right. Any questions or comments? Nothing. Then a motion then to receive the report is presented. Councillor Houston moves and supported by Councillor Dorner. On the motion, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to item 5A, our legislative and clerk services. The LCS 2022-34 appointment of alternate member to Essex County Council. Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good evening, members of council. The report presented this evening is in regards to appointing an alternate member of County Council for the term 2022 to 2026. This is not a mandatory appointment under the Municipal Act. However, in 2020, Council appointed Councillor Jobin, which her term ended on November 14th. At the Policies and Priorities Committee meeting in January of 2020, a draft policy was presented with options to select an alternate member. and council provided direction to administration with the option to draw names from a hat from those members expressing interest to be appointed. This draft policy is attached to the report with a further revision that the appointment be offered first to the incumbent councillors with previous municipal experience. The policy outlines if there is no incumbents expressing an interest, the clerk will canvass interest from the new councillors. The report recommends the following: that the report be received, that the draft policy entitled Appointment of an Alternative Member to County Council be approved, and further that council commence the appointment of an alternative member to county council and approve the alternate member appointment by bylaw.
And could you explain to the members why the alternate member? And that's it. Basically, if the mayor or the deputy mayor are absent, obviously, it's to maintain the two votes at the county table. Councillor Jobin.
Yes, thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, I would like to nominate Councillor Houston to be the alternative, to give him the opportunity if he's interested.
Through you. Thank you very much, Councillor Jobin. I will accept.
All right. Yeah, seconder. If there's a second it, Councillor Rico, because I thought maybe we'd have to put both of you in the center here. And don't take on a farm girl. All right. Thank you. On the motion to have the alternate county council member, Councillor Houston. On the motion, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That's unanimous. Congratulations.
That apply to the rest of the recommendation as well?
Yes. Yes, it does. Okay. Next is also our LCS 2022-35-22 municipal and school board election results and voter turnout for information, basically. Disappointing at the numbers that were there. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. I would just like to make a comment if I could through you. It was, and at the door, I heard a lot of people saying they weren't familiar with the online telephone voting, but this was our third municipal election. There was some confusion with the federal and provincial that had just passed, so there was a difference on how those took place, but we still offered. It was 24 hours a day for 10 days, and we still offered 5 business days during even some non-business hours and 2 Saturdays. So it's almost like we made it too easy or something. I really don't know. And again, I do understand there wasn't a mayor's race or a deputy mayor's race, so that makes it a little less, appealing or competitive maybe to say, but I don't know what more we could have done. We advertised, we all, even the other candidates who weren't successful, everyone advertised on social media. And anyway, I just hope that next election we see a better turnout, and I don't know how better we can convey the voting process, but just keep talking about it, even just prior to election season.
To your point as well, it wasn't necessarily just a low voter turnout in our municipality. If you look across the county, even when they had full slates, and numbers were like 32%. It doesn't matter. Lakeshore, all of them. I think the highest one was maybe Essex, but still it was, I think barely over 40 or something, over 50 there. And so forth. But outside of that, if you look at Windsor, look at other community, city of Toronto was in the 30%, somewhere in that range. So I think it's something that I don't know what the answer is, Councillor Jobin, really, but is it apathy? Is it, no interest? But I think, you know, in a country like ours where, you know, we have a democracy where you have the freedom to be able to choose your governments, whether it's local, provincially or federal. And even you see the numbers even at the federal level and that going down. To me, that's scary, really, because at the end of the day, the people deserve the government they elect. That's the reality, and you know, and so forth. So, you know, to the town, the clerk's office, everybody. I mean, you're out there. We're on social media every day, you know, and you could have, you know, you could vote at home over a cup of coffee on Saturday morning. That's what I did. But you know, Saturday morning I voted, you know, over a cup of coffee. It was so easy. Took 2 minutes, done. And you know, to have those numbers, I think some of them are actually, it's embarrassing, you know, in that regard. So I don't know. But I think we need to do some work starting now to try to encourage, you know, folks to, you know, to vote. And, you know, to me, it's almost an insult to, I look at Councillor Dorner, who served our country 8 years and wore the uniform, you know, and everybody, and what they've done, they protect freedom and democracy in our country. And that's what we show them, you know, and people have given up their lives so that we could have the right to be able to vote. And I don't know what the answer is either. I mean, it is actually frustrating. And I know there folks within my own neighborhood in that, you know, didn't vote. They could have. They all have access to phones, you know, and technology and so forth. So I don't know what the answer is, you know, in that regards, but we need to do something. And our associations, I think, have to, you know, we got to figure out why people don't no interest. But I know knocking on doors, I heard folks saying, I don't vote. They said, no, I can't be bothered. And it tells me, wow, that's pretty scary. And not by one, many. They said, I don't vote. Doesn't make sense, but it is what it is. Go ahead, Councillor Houston.
Thank you. And through you, I also just want to pass my appreciation along to the clerk's office, deputy clerk, because I had calls from individuals that, you know, some of them are actually upset that they couldn't cast their vote. But, you know, with the amount of acclamations in my area, that was okay. But some of them didn't have their voting cards, right? And so I instructed them to come to town hall. They came to town hall, and, you know, when I reconnected with them, they said it was simple, it was easy. Thank you very much, right? Everybody at the town was great to deal with. So everyone who I had spoke to had that to say. So I just want to pass that along. And again, thank you for the data of the voting and all of it that we were able to collect. So I just wanted to pass my appreciation along. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Looking at the numbers there, basically this election, voting by mail turned out the highest voter turnout. So maybe getting that piece of paper in the mail is a reminder to those people to say, I have to vote, versus like Councillor Jobin said, who we have the phone and it takes 30 seconds, but there's no paper reminder to tell these people to vote, even though it's all over. It could be a psychological thing, but, you know, vote by mail, 45 and 50%, that's pretty good for Kingsville. But we've had high voter turnout in the past. So there is an anomaly. I believe the 3 acclamations, the mayor, deputy mayor, and Ward 4. If you look at Ward 4, that used to be one of the highest voter turnout. That's, you know, Sangway South area there, the Tecumseh Hamlet, and it was single-digit voter turnout. If you were a French school supporter, there was no to vote for. And so that, you know, when people talk, they're out there, they don't talk about voting. So it is what it is this term, but it will change, and it depends on like you say,
but you know, we did get that card in the mail, you know, and I stuck it right on the refrigerator. I stuck it right on the refrigerator, you know, as a reminder and that, but I don't know, it's
I'm no statistician, but I think the high numbers are because there was a mayor or deputy mayor vote in those towns. That's why I don't think it matters if we do internet, telephone, or vote by mail. The people have their decision made if they're voting that year or that moment for a provincial, federal, or municipal. So I think we did the best job. I think we provided three availabilities to vote, and residents came and did it. 33% of them. So thank you.
go ahead, Counselor.
I will say that voting or not voting is more complex than the mechanism by which it is, there is apathy at every level. And none of that apathy can be kind of contained in two boxes. People have a decision for themselves on how they will participate in the system that serves them. I think there is a lot of work to be done by those of us sitting in these chairs and those that weren't successful to keep engaging with the community in an encouragement to allow them to feel part of the process, so that when the end comes and they get to decide the next part of the process, they will feel as if they've been involved all along. It's a longer process to do, and it's never perfect. Democracy never is. But I'm proud of the work that we have done to get here and to keep that system open for the people that feel that that's something they want to participate in, and that they would feel welcome in that. And I think we just keep doing that work as we go along, and hopefully we can chip away at that number.
Pretty soon though, as you go to the grocery store, everybody voted for you. Remember that. Okay, a motion then to receive the results. Councillor Jobin, Councillor Houston, thank you. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Next report from also our LCS report 2022-36 accessibility report, the 2022 Tecumseh municipal elections.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship and members of council. Following on the heels of the previous report, I present you the accessibility report for the municipal and school board elections. The Municipal Elections Act states that following a regular election and within 90 days after voting day, the clerk prepare a report about the identification, removal, and prevention of barriers that affect electors and candidates with disabilities, and shall make that report available to the public. The report presented this evening highlights the accessibility features used during this past election. One of the most positive measures was using internet and telephone voting as the voting methods, as it allows any elector to vote anytime, anywhere, without electors having to come to a polling site, especially those with accessibility challenges. There are many others that are outlined and identified in this report, and the following recommendation is as follows: that the report be received and that the report be posted on the town's website for public access. I'm available for any questions from the mayor and council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? If not, then a motion then to receive the report. Councillor Dorner, Councillor Higginson, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Thank you very much. Move on, Public Works Engineering Services, Upper Little River Watershed Drainage and Master Plan Class CA project update and notice of study completion. Yay, I'm going to say, because that's a long one. Not the report, it's long getting here.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good evening, members of council. So just hopefully a shorter summary on this report. So as council may recall, IRCA, in partnership with the city, and the town of Tecumseh initiated this study back in 2004. There were several significant delays over that period of time. One starting in 2005 with the land use plan for the Sandwich South Employment Lands that was initiated by the city. The other notable delay was the study for the Lausanne Parkway and County Road 42 municipal class EA. And Christina, if you could pull up attachment 1 for me. Thank you. So attachment 1 to this report does identify the study area with the majority of the lands taking place within the city of Windsor itself. But we do have some significant lands within Tecumseh, and perhaps it's a little bit better highlighted on attachment number 2. If you can scroll down and maybe zoom out a little bit. So attachment 2 is a watershed map of the entire town of Tecumseh. So you can see there in the, what I believe is green, which almost looks gray on the screen. But what is in green is the upper Little River or the Little River watershed area. So you can see parts of it in the Tecumseh Hamlet, as well as the Old Castle Hamlet. So the majority of this work on the study took place between 2014 and 2017. The report was completed in 2017, presented to Town Council in May of 2017, and it highlighted the 6 different alternatives that were reviewed and presented the recommended solution, which was the grouped stormwater management facilities. So the notice of completion was filed in 2017. However, due to the overall duration of the project, changes to the municipal class EA requirements, and comments received from the MECP during a Part 2 order appeal that was received by a single resident living in the city of Windsor, the Upper Little River study was not finalized after the 30-day public review period. So since that time, since 2017, through additional meetings and discussions with the ministry, IRCA, the city and the town we have identified a kind of a revised approach to the master plan process under the municipal class EA. So it is now being undertaken as an approach 1, as an approach 2. And very important to highlight that no changes have been made to the alternatives considered or the general master plan recommendations since the filing of the notice in 2017. The change in approach does not lessen the technical merits of the study or lower the quality of the report recommendations. So earlier this year, September 2022, IRCA Board of Directors endorsed a recommendation from their administration to circulate the notice of study completion. So this, the Upper Little River study will serve as a parent document to subsequent more detailed studies undertaken within the watershed. Some of these studies are ongoing, including the Little River floodplain mapping that's currently ongoing for the city, the Sandwich South Master Servicing Plan, also undertaken by the city, the Tecumseh Hamlet Secondary Plan, Municipal Class EA and Functional Servicing Report, which the town is completing and hope to have a complete early in the new year, as well as the Old Castle Stormwater Master Plan, which was completed earlier this year. So next steps moving forward would be to advertise the notice of study completion, and then following the 30-day review period and provided all comments have been addressed, administration will bring forward a separate report to council to have the Upper Little River study formally adopted. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
The only question I have just on that Little River, you know, now that we look at especially on the Hamlet, I mean, the southern portion of the Sandwich South leading to Old Castle, I get that. Like the dividing line is almost, I want to see behind your place, you know, Corby in that area. But does that mean now that all of the stormwater from there will be going into the city?
To you, your worship. So this, the map that's provided in front of you as attachment number 2, this was actually created earlier this year And it's because of some of the other background studies that the town has initiated over the last couple of years, right? So Blue being the outlet to Lake St. Clair, so that was undertaken under the Tecumseh Stormwater Master Plan. So we were able to really define what those limits were as far as drainage. The Upper Little River, of course, is a subject tonight, which was green. Pike Creek, the yellow. We do have an ongoing study with a drainage engineer. And then when you get down to Turkey Creek and River Canard and the Old Castle area, we were able to capture and really better define what those drainage areas were as part of the Old Castle Master Plan. So, you know, I think throughout the years, we had some sort of sense of where the delineations were, but now with all these different plans coming together, we're able to really kind of hone in on what drains where.
So it's not just capacity within what's going to Lake St. Clair, or capacity going on Turkey Creek, or capacity going to Pike Creek. It's basically the natural course.
Yes, that is correct. So it's following the topography of the land and natural water courses, and I guess once you get into the urbanized area, more of the, you know, the engineering and the design aspect of the storm sewers.
Questions, comments? 18 years. Anyway, well done. Keep our fingers crossed. Go to get it out there, and then we'll see what happens in 30 days. So a motion then to move forward. And I think here is the recommendation that council endorse the issuance of the notice of study completion by Essex Region Conservation Authority for the Upper Little River watershed drainage and master plan class environmental assessment to commence the 30-day period review. Move Councillor Houston, support Councillor Higginson. On the motion, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Move on to Public Works Environmental Services 2022-43 transfer license agreement on title of lands at 5220 and 5250 Outer Drive and 5245 Birch Street. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I could ask Christina to go to, I believe it's attachment 1. Yeah, there we go. If you can zoom in just a little bit. So in 2003, Mold Plas Incorporated and Build a Mold Limited entered into an agreement with the town for the purpose of providing access across Outer Drive for a private water main. You can kind of see the interconnection of that private water main on the attachment. And so this water line was required to operate their fire line or sprinkler system within the warehouse itself. Section 2.1F of the agreement states that the licensee, Mold Plas, is not to assign this license or sublicense any part of the water main to anyone without prior written consent of the town. So the current owner is selling the subject properties to Nobel REIT Limited Partnership by its general partner, Nobel REIT GP Inc., and requires the town to sign the consent, which is contained within bylaw 2022-84, which is on the agenda tonight. So there are 2 recommendations to the report. The first one, that the report be received, and the second, that bylaw 2022-84 be given first, second, and third reading, transferring the license agreement via consent between the corporation of the town of Tecumseh and Mold Plas Inc. and Build a Mold Limited to the corporation of the town of Tecumseh and Nobel REIT Limited Partnership by its general partner, Nobel REIT GP Inc., to reflect the new property ownership.
Any questions or comments? Then you've heard the recommendation. Do I have a motion? Councillor Tonio, Councillor Dorner. On the motion, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. All right, move on to bylaws, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have 6 bylaws that require first and second reading, and if appropriate, third and final. The first bylaw this evening is bylaw number 82 to appoint Councillor Houston as the alternate member to County Council. The second bylaw is an appointments bylaw. The the third bylaw, which is bylaw number 84, is the license agreement that we just heard from the Director of Public Works. Bylaw number 85 is bylaw for the long-term financing agreement with Essex Powerline Corporation. Bylaw number 86 is the appointments for the emergency management program. Bylaw number 87 is the license agreement for the LaSoar soccer fields. I'm requesting first and second readings, and if appropriate, third and final.
Thank you. On the bylaws. 2 readings, Councillor Jobin, Councillor Houston. Any questions or comments on the bylaws as presented? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any? And then 3rd reading is in order. Councillor Houston move, 3 readings, Councillor Jobin support. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. And any unfinished business? Any new business? Go ahead, Councillor Houston.
Thank you, Your Worship. I had a request from a resident that lives on Hebert Street, just inquiring about a traffic calming bollard. So I was just wondering, I know we've got a traffic calming report coming or is in the works. So I just wanted to inquire on what the current status of that is. And I don't know if we have a specific criteria for those calming bollards around town. But I can refer the resident to administration. But I just wanted to ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. To Councillor Houston. Thank you for the question. And if you could refer the resident to the town, but in regards to your inquiry about the study, so we haven't lost sight of it. It is on our to-do list. There has been a number of other projects, I think, this year that kind of have jumped the queue, including, the asset management plan and some other regulatory studies that had to take place. But 2023, I hope it to be the year of finalizing studies and bringing policies forward. So hopefully in Q1 or Q2 of next year, we could bring that forward. With respect to installation of bollards or the in-street signage, we like to try and deploy the radar unit first, just to get a sense of what the driver behavior is out on those streets. We don't typically put them on local streets. We have this year as it relates to a few construction projects, and we saw a lot of shortcutting and perhaps some speeding in those neighborhoods, but it's definitely something we can look into next year once we can deploy the radar unit again.
No, the other one. Sorry about that. We'll get it right yet. You want me to start over again? No, I'm just kidding. 6 o'clock, our next meeting of council, and to start, that'll be the committee and board appointments, 7 p.m. regular council meeting. And certainly before we adjourn, everyone is welcome to the county council tomorrow night. It's the inauguration of county council, so 7 o'clock start. So everybody's invited to come down to the Civic Center. Okay, then nothing further. Yeah, go ahead.
As it's Councillor Dorner and Councillor Higginson's first meeting, it might be appropriate for them both to adjourn the meeting.
Oh, I think that's a great idea. Maybe what we should have is give both 2 minutes and certainly this is your first meeting. I mean, I apologize. Should have said this is your first official meeting, and welcome to the team and all of us. Wish you all the best as you're at the beginning of the road for the next 4 years. So welcome to council, representing both Ward 1 and Ward 2. And so I'll ask Councillor Alicia to move adjournment, supported by Councillor Dorner, and then comments, I'll turn it back to you, Councillor Higginson.
Thanks very much. I don't actually have much more to offer than I did at inaugural meeting, which was quite short. But just thank you to my supporters, my family, my friends, and to Ward 1. I'll make note at this point. It seems much more couth to do so that we had 35% turnout in Ward 1. So well done, Ward 1, for showing up. I'm sure it helped that I was pounding down your doors for 10 days. And thank you to all of you and to senior administration for welcoming me so greatly and making me feel like this was a meeting that I felt prepared for, even though it was very long, which Mark prepared me for, and certainly the school board did as well. So but I felt prepared and welcomed and able to kind of make comments. I hope that continues. I'm sure that it will, and I'm so grateful to be here. And for the next 4 years, it'll be a ride. I'm sure this was quite a good first agenda to warm me up to. So I think I'm prepared now. Thank you.
This is to get you ready for the budget. Councillor Dorner.
Yep, just it's definitely like an experience. I'm learning as I go, but it's I'm proud to be here. I'm happy for everyone that voted for me and all the support that I've received from like the town of Tecumseh and everyone here in town of Tecumseh, like administration. I'm looking forward for the next 4 years. I'm excited to see where like everything goes, and yeah, I'll keep it short and sweet. Just end on that. Excellent. Yeah.
It's been duly moved and supported, and adjournment's in order. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And for those streaming from the comforts of home, thank you for and thank you for your patience. It was a lengthy meeting, but that's what happens when you have a little bit of a break, and then inauguration, and then as you all know, the town business continues. So with that, we bid you all good night.